Chapter 384. What? What is this? A pill. When she saw the small pill, Ruihui couldn't help laughing out of anger. She sneered. Are you a fool, or do you think I'm a fool? Just this thing. Can it cure my disease? Naturally, Ruihui was well aware of just how severe her own Kenzaki family's hereditary disease was. Something that could not be treated by modern medicine could be cured by a small pill. That would be a miracle. What's more, this medicine was given by her enemy. Ruihui couldn't even take it directly. Who knew what messy ingredients were in the medicine given by Ayam? After seeing the expression on Ruihui's face, Ayam naturally knew what she was thinking. However, Yongji wasn't in a hurry. Instead, she smiled and said, Believe it or not, I'll leave the medicine here. If you want to eat it, then eat it. If you don't want to eat it, then throw it away. After that, Ayam stood up and walked out without hesitation. First of all, the Hooligan 100 Immortals pill that Ayam gave to Ruihui could indeed cure her disease. There was no doubt about that. But of course, Ruihui wouldn't believe her at the moment, and Ayam didn't mean to force her to believe. She just left the small tea room silently and left the Kamiyoshi Imperial Garden with the roar of a helicopter, leaving Ruihui sitting alone. Left. She just left. After receiving the message from the guardian ninja Ruki, who was guarding outside, Ruihui couldn't believe her eyes. Originally, Ruihui thought that Ayam first put forward the conditions and then took out the pill. After that, she must have some other means to deceive her. However, Yongji did the opposite. She actually left behind the rogue's 100 Immortal pill and left. She had no intention of explaining at all. After Ayam left, Ruihui looked at the small round pill in her hand and couldn't help but fall into deep thought. Something was wrong. Something was wrong. Something was wrong at all. In Ruihui's opinion, this situation was completely wrong. It could be said that she didn't even know from which angle to start thinking about it. Did Ayam really come here to cooperate with her? It should be. After all, Ayam's most well-known partner was Ruihui Kenzaki, not the Kamiyoshi clan. Basically, she only valued Ruihui and wasn't interested in anyone else. As for Ayam's conditions, it was impossible for them not to be tempted. Ruihui's terminal illness and Colored Glaze's future. The mother and daughter's biggest pain point at the moment was to kill two birds with one stone, and even hit the bullseye. To put it bluntly, the rest of Ruihui's life was to fight for the future of Colored Glaze. She had given up on everything else. However, Ayam's conditions gave Ruihui a glimmer of hope. It gave her a glimmer of hope that she couldn't believe. Speaking of which, this pill smells so good. Thinking of this, Ruihui carefully extended her delicate nose and took a whiff of the pill's fragrance. All of a sudden, she felt a strange fragrance enter her nostrils. It was as if her whole body became extremely comfortable, and her originally tired body became much more relaxed. Expensive medicine. Without a doubt, this was the most expensive medicine that Ruihui had ever seen in her life. However, such an expensive medicine was something that Tenmu Ayam sent over. No matter how curious Ruihui was, she couldn't just eat this thing directly. That would be too stupid. Ryuki. Yes. Following Ruihui's order, the female ninja who was responsible for guarding her quickly knelt down on one knee in front of her master. Take this thing to the research institute and analyze its composition, but don't damage it too much. After handing the Hooligan's 100 Immortal pill to Ryuki, Ruihui couldn't help but add such a reminder. Although Ruihui didn't quite believe that the medicine that Yongji sent over was really the elixir that could cure her terminal illness, she still subconsciously held a glimmer of hope. If the test showed that there was really no poison in the medicine, Ruihui might give it a try. Just take it as a gamble? I'm crazy. I can't believe I have such an idea. Looking at the direction where Ryuki left, Ruihui couldn't help but sigh slightly. It was fine if a person was always pure of heart and few desires. But as long as there was desire and greed, then the heart would be like a torn rag that could never be closed. The current Ruihui was in such a state of desire and greed. Previously, she only knew that she would die soon, so she had no desire. But after having a chat with Ayam and leaving the pill, Ruihui's heart, that was as calm as stagnant water, was suddenly stirred up again. Of course, This change was also completely within Iam's expectations. Hee ha 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 ha. When she was flying in the air on the subjugation of the world helicopter, the big boss of the Heavenly Eye group couldn't help but laugh out loud. Because she clearly knew that the dignified goddess-like Lord of Kamikaze had already been torn open by her attack. Not long after, when Rui Hui tested that the pill was full of ingredients that modern science couldn't identify, this hole would instantly become a huge crack and swallow her whole. Rui Hui, you can't run away. We are destined to work together to turn this world upside down, hee hee. Just as Iam was thinking this, the pilot in front turned around and asked cautiously, Master Iam, are we returning to the unrestrained sky tower now? Well, although there are still some things to do, let's wait until night. Looking at the rising sun in the distance, Iam realized that she didn't sleep for almost the whole night. So what she needed to do now was to go home and get some beauty sleep. And when she was full of energy, she would visit another target. Yes, another target. Another unlucky person who became Iam's target after her rebirth. Or rather, a lucky person. Not long after, Iam returned to the unrestrained sky tower and fell asleep on the bed. On the other side, in the Kamishiro courtyard, a young plumber who was sweating all over, as if he had just finished fixing the pipes, cursed and swore as he left the door. Really? Isn't it just a broken statue? Why do you have to polish it so neatly? This young plumber who left the Kamishiro courtyard was naturally the evil main character who had just entered the game not long ago, Ryuto Kiryu. Now he was still in the period where he had just made an oath with the colored glaze, then picked up a stone and drew a cross on the statue of Heavenly Enchantress, and then polished it. After that, Ryuto drove to Kamishiro in the car of Kawasaki and Kawasaki. On the way, he was thinking about how to deal with the traitor Sakata. But now that old man Bunkomaru owes me a favor, if I use this favor well, I should be able to solve this mess. Well, no problem. I'm the main character, this is nothing. Thinking of this, Ryuto's mouth raised a smug smile, and it looked quite like the descending of the Dragon King. The situation continued to develop as smoothly as the previous time. Ryuto returned to the Rulon Group headquarters, met consultant Fujiki, and then sneaked out of the headquarters to find Sakata. He also pulled Bunkomaru and Yamamoto to sneak into Sakata's mansion. On the surface, Ryuto's plan seemed to be fine. However, what he never expected was that just as he slipped out of the headquarters, an unexpected figure appeared at the gate of the Rulon Group headquarters. I'll stop here, Mr. Akima, please help yourself. After ordering his subordinates to open the door, the head of the search department, Lin Hua, said to the man next to him while smoking, Thank you. After getting out of the car, the man who had just left the nesting duck prison took a deep breath and walked toward the mansion in front of him. For everyone, the return of the leader of the Rulon group was an unexpected event. So when Akima led Fujiki and a group of brothers into Sakata's base, Ryuto, who was about to throw Sakata down from the second floor, was stunned. Well, what's going on? Am I seeing things? When they saw Akima appear, everyone's eyes almost popped out. What's going on? Isn't the leader of the Rulon group in the nesting duck prison? There are still 30 years left in the sentence. How did he get out? But no matter what, Akima appeared in front of everyone alive. The moment Sakata saw his boss, he was so scared that he almost peed his pants on the spot. If it weren't for Ryuto's quick hands that quickly threw him down, Ryuto's clothes would be gone. Sakata, it seems that I was wrong about you. Akima looked at the traitor of the Rulon group on the ground, shook his head slightly, and said in a heavy tone. In this way, a storm that should have had a huge impact came to an end with Ryuto's sneak attack and Akima's sudden return. After that, Ryuto learned that the reason why Akima was able to get out of prison early was that the search department found strong evidence to prove Akima's innocence. So he was quickly paroled. In Ima's words, he only needed to go to the court a few more times to go through the procedures, and he would be a free man. In the future, he would no longer need to sit in prison every day. He could go to the KTV and sing to his heart's content. Ryuto was naturally very happy about his physics dad's release from prison, but he also felt extremely confused at the same time. What the? Is this really the game I'm familiar with? That night, when Ryudo, his dad, Fujiki, and others drank some wine to celebrate, and then walked toward his room, he kept thinking about this serious problem in his mind. In the red photo album too, no survivors that Long Do knew of, it was impossible for such a scene to appear. In fact, until the end of the game, Kiryu Akima was still in prison and didn't appear at all. If Ryudo did something that affected the development of history, then this impact was a bit too fast. Besides, he didn't do anything special, right? I can't figure it out. I really can't figure it out. Voila. But even if he couldn't figure it out, Ryudo still opened the door and returned to his room, ready to rest on the bed. You're back, quickly close the door and sit down. However, when Ryudo entered the room, the peerless beauty sitting on the bed said to him with a smile, "Oh, I'm going." Before he finished speaking, Ryudo's body suddenly trembled, and at the same time, his whole body was fixed on the spot like a mouse being stared at by a cat. First of all, this was Ryudo Kiryo's room, so naturally, there would be no woman in it. Secondly, this woman sitting on Ryudo's bed with peerless beauty, and the temperament of a witch was a character that should never appear here. This is not Tenmuayam. Ryudo played the game before, and he remembered the appearance of every character in the game very clearly. But even if he didn't remember it very clearly, it wasn't difficult to see that the woman sitting on his bed was the final demon king in the game. Am I crazy? Or is there something wrong with this world? If there was something more difficult to understand than Akima's sudden release from prison, it was the scene of the great demon king suddenly appearing in his room. Are you kidding me? The game just started. And as soon as I returned to my room to prepare for the next day, I found the final demon king in my room waiting for me? This is simply impossible. It doesn't conform to the script, nor does it conform to logic. If this strange situation happened in the game, the only explanation would be that there was a huge bug, and it was a huge bug that was enough to kill the programmer. Thinking of this, Ryudo's expression suddenly became very interesting. He stood at the door of his room, as if he was ready to turn and run at any time, but he didn't dare to run, because Ryudo knew how powerful I am was. Since this woman suddenly appeared in his room, it was absolutely impossible for her to leave him room to escape. At this time, the uneasy expression on Ryudo's face obviously made I am very happy. So she hooked her finger at the boy, smiled and said, "What are you waiting for? Come here and talk." Yes. Although he didn't know why I am appeared here, Ryudo could only follow her instructions. After all, for the current Ryudo, he simply didn't have the capital to fight against I am, the great demon king. So he could only choose to obey for the time being. This girl called me over, she won't directly kill me, right? But fortunately I still have some money. If I die, I can revive and run. Ryudo thought in his heart as he walked towards the bed. However, what Ryudo didn't expect was that the moment he approached the bed, a slender jade arm quickly stretched out and hooked his body onto the bed like a fallen leaf. Chirp. Before Ryudo could react to what happened, a delicate lip fell on his lips. That feeling was really exhilarating. Chapter 385. For Ryudo, who was a transmigrator, it was normal for him to know all the character traits and relevant information in the game. But Iam's move was something he never expected. Feeling the seductive touch from the cherry lips, smelling the deadly sweetness like poppy in his nose, his eyes were also looking at the pair of eyes of the abyss that was close at hand. This feeling for Ryudo, who was still a little virgin, was simply 2F king exciting. It can't be. The great demon in the game, Tenmuayam, is kissing me? Just as he realized what was happening, Ryudo almost fainted on the spot. Something's wrong. I must be dreaming, or something's wrong with this world. Although he thought so in his heart, the soft touch on his body repeatedly reminded him that this was reality. After Iam kissed for a few minutes, she finally let go of Ryudo. Looking at the young man's blushing face on the bed, she revealed a joyful smile. Hee ha. For a moment, Iam's heart was overjoyed. After all, compared to the Ryudo in the last timeline, The current Ryudo was as weak as a newborn baby. But this is how it should be. This is how it should be. I.M. likes this Ryudo. Because the Ryudo in this timeline was still in the beginner stage, it was also the best opportunity for I.M. to take him under her command. Without a doubt, I.M. likes Ryudo. This kind of like is a woman's love for a man. What's more, this young man that the Demon King likes is still in the beginning stage of growth. Whether it is physically or mentally, there is still a lot of room for growth. In other words, the current I.M. can freely cultivate him into her ideal state. This plan is called Ryudo Kiryo Cultivation Plan, or Ryudo Kiryo Sky Demon Plan. At this time, the name of the plan appeared in I.M.'s mind, and her gaze towards Ryudo became more direct. At this time, a very strange scene formed on the bed in Ryudo's room. Ryudo was lying on the bed like a little girl with a red face, and I.M. was lying on her side beside him, smiling as she reached out to touch the young man's cheek. If only looking at the appearance, lying on the bed with such a great beauty, it was a scene that could instantly kill all men, the kind that almost made people vomit blood on the spot. But after Ryudo came back to his senses, his eyes became more and more panicked. Something's not right. I didn't accidentally stumble into the game's hidden line, did I? Just because I messed up the course of history? According to Ryudo's knowledge, the game Red Album 2. No survivors originally had two lines, the open line and the hidden line, or called the justice line and the evil line. The justice line was easy to understand. The protagonist basically chose a female protagonist to develop a relationship with her. In the end, he either killed I.M. or reconciled with his family, and then lived a shameless life with the female protagonist of this line. And then the whole story would be over. This line was complicated, but the core was similar. It was just divided into three parts: colored glaze, union, and dunya. In the end, it couldn't be separated from the justice line. However, the evil line in the game was a hidden route. The prerequisites were to clear each of the three female leads' routes once before it could be unlocked. There were many complicated options to follow, and many players would not even be able to clear it without looking up the strategy guide. In the evil line, the female protagonist's position was occupied by the final boss of the justice line, I.M., and together with the bed-warming winter flower, they formed the evil female protagonist duo. With such a female protagonist, the evil line's content was naturally particularly evil. It was more or less about the protagonist and I.M. destroying the world. And in the end, the two of them became the Adam and Eve of the new world. How to describe it? Although the evil line's content wasn't particularly bad in Ryudo's eyes, he still couldn't understand why he inexplicably entered this line. Why? I clearly didn't clear the colored glaze, union, and dunya's lines. How did I directly enter the hidden line? Forget it. Since I'm already here, I'll just take it as it comes. But now, I.M. seems to have taken a liking to me. Then what should I do? Gulp, what should I do? Thinking of this, Ryudo turned his head to look at the delicate body lying on the bed. Especially when he happened to see I.M.'s seductive and broad chest, he couldn't help but swallow a mouthful of saliva. In this world, there was no man who could resist the charm of this woman, unless the man had some kind of biological defect. Especially when lying on the same bed with her, even Lu Xiaohui couldn't help but turn into Shimen Qing. And Shimen Qing would directly turn into a chihuahua. How is it? Are you infatuated with me? Just when Ryudo was immersed in the beauty of the great demon queen, I.M. even moved closer to him, and reached out to hug the young man in her arms. At this moment, Ryudo suddenly remembered a very ordinary bottle of something facial cleanser. Facial cleanser was an essential daily product for every man. It was white, soft, and smooth, and it felt great when applied on the face. It could make the skin full of vitality, and make the person soar into the sky. But even so, Ryudo still struggled to raise his head and asked in confusion, "That I am Sama? Why did you come to find me today? I have taken a liking to you, and I want to make you my man. It's that simple." In response to Ryudo's very straightforward question, I.M. also used very straightforward words to reply. "You actually took a liking to me so quickly. Could this be the so-called protagonist aura?" Suddenly, Ryudo smiled stiffly. But he immediately recovered and asked again, I am, Sama, you mean you want me to follow you in the future? Don't make it sound so bad. Hearing this, Yongji shook her head and said with a smile, Since I've taken a fancy to you, then you're the male owner of the Heavenly Eye Group. How can you say that you're following me? This woman, sure enough, her brain circuit was completely different from ordinary people. Speaking of which, today was actually the first time Ryudo and I am met. But this woman directly said that she wanted him to be her male owner. No matter how much they liked each other, this progress was too fast. If it was another woman, Ryudo might have thought that she was joking. But I am was serious, she was undoubtedly serious. Ryudo only thought that her brain circuit was special, and the way she thought was different from others. But he would never have thought that I.M. was also a transmigrator, and had many interactions with him in the later timeline. In the previous timeline, I.M. was one step behind, and did not get what she wanted. So in this timeline, she wanted to get what she wanted no matter what. But because he knew that this woman's brain was not very normal, Ryudo could not help but ask, I.M. Sama, what do you want me to do with you? Rule the world. Rule the world. That's not bad. But before that, the first task is to destroy this rotten old world. When mentioning her goal, I.M.'s tone became particularly proud, as if she was introducing something amazing. Why destroy the world? This question was actually very simple. It was nothing more than a game. In I.M.'s mind, she saw this world as an amusement park, and tearing down the old amusement park, and building a new one according to her preferences. Wasn't this a very normal thing? Of course, Ryudo did not have any objections to this extremely special game. After all, he was not from this world. Whether most of the residents died or not, whether Japan perished or not, it had nothing to do with him. On the contrary, he was happy to see it. But Ryudo still had a few people he cared about, such as the three heroines. Although Ryudo was now walking the evil line, and it was estimated that it would be difficult to have any intersection with the three heroines, he still didn't want to see Colored Glaze and others die in the hands of I.M. He still hoped to save them. So Ryudo tentatively asked, I.M. Sama, in the process of destroying the world, if I want to protect a few people, okay, whatever, as long as it doesn't affect the overall situation, you can protect tens of thousands of people if you want. I.M. naturally wouldn't care about these trivial matters, but she casually agreed to Ryudo's request. Phew, great, now it's much easier. When he thought that he could save the lives of Colored Glaze and others, Ryudo also felt a lot more relaxed. He no longer had to worry about dragging the three heroines into the water when he followed I.M. Now that he was relaxed, he also began to think about the benefits of walking the evil line, compared to the justice line, where one's hands were tied, and one had to think about this, and that. The evil line was basically killing all the way, and the degree of hatred was maxed out. It was simple and violent. Therefore, if only from the perspective of a player, playing the evil line was actually much more enjoyable. After all, the great demon king had become someone to sleep with, and she even gave him such a big dowry as the Heavenly Eye Group. It was simply a king at the start of the game, and he was invincible when he went out. Most importantly, he could have many children with I.M. in the future. At the thought of this, Ryudo couldn't help but feel a little itchy. It couldn't be helped. Who asked I.M. to be so beautiful? That kind of beauty and temperament were completely on the level of a witch, and people were willing to fall for her. I've decided. I'm going to walk the evil line, and I'm going to become a great demon king. Of course, it was useless for Ryudo to not make the decision, since the decision was not up to him anyway. At this time, Ryudo could be said to have no room to resist in front of I.M. If he didn't agree, I.M. could easily kill him and leave him with nothing. Why torture himself like this? Couldn't he just agree obediently? Just like that, Ryudo, who had accepted his fate, held I.M.'s delicate white hand and gently kissed the back of it. As you wish, my queen, from today onwards, we are on the same side. In the young master's room of the Rulon Group's headquarters, the curtains of a show of collusion slowly opened. I.M. was obviously very satisfied with Ryudo's understanding of the situation, so she smiled and said, Since you've agreed, then come back with me tonight. Ah, Go back. Go back where? Back to our home, the unrestrained sky tower. This is too fast. Although he had agreed to collude with Iam, Ryudo did not expect this woman to want to pack him up and go home tonight. Judging from Yongji's actions just now, Longdo didn't even need to think to know what would happen if she brought him back tonight. It would definitely be cough 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 cough. What a joke. Ryudo Kiryu, am not such a casual person. However, just as Ryudo was about to find an excuse to refuse, Iam smiled and kissed him on the cheek, and whispered in his ear. Don't you want to be with me? Big sister can teach you a lot of things, the kind that can last until morning. Good. If Long Do could still speak at this moment, he would probably say, which eat this old sun's stick. But unfortunately, this inexperienced evil protagonist could not resist the temptation of Bronze Skin Supreme and Iron Bone Supreme. In the end, he was defeated and was brought back to the unrestrained sky tower by Iam. That night, Ryudo's state of mind changed like this. Your Majesty, you are amazing. Your Majesty, this is an unforgettable night. Your Majesty, don't you feel tired? Your Majesty, I think I can't take it anymore. Your Majesty the Queen, please spare me. Your Majesty, yen percent hashtag percent asterisk asterisk. Percent yen hashtag at. Dash. When Iam finally fell asleep at dawn, Ryudo felt that he was about to become a dry corpse. If he did not quickly buy a bunch of medicine from the Krypton Gold shop to save his life, he might have died on the bed on the spot. And this result was even after Ryudo bought the physique, a tribute in advance. Before doing the last step, Iam specially gave Ryudo 1 billion as a maintenance fee, raising Ryudo's physique to LV5 physique, Extreme Superman. If it was not for this superhuman level of physique, Iam might have really taken this little virgin's life. So this kind of thing is so scary. Looking at the woman who was using his arm as a pillow, lying on top of it and sleeping soundly, Ryudo could not help but have a great fear of her peerless beauty. But it was useless to say anything now. The sword was already back in the scabbard, and the blade was almost ground into a needle by the iron pestle of the scabbard. Following this, Ryudo could only work hard to improve his self-cultivation, so as to avoid dying on the bed one day. That would be too embarrassing. However, just as the two people in the unrestrained sky tower were happily enjoying the genuine friendship of life and death, on the other side of the Kamishiro Imperial Garden, a figure was scratching her ears and scratching her cheeks as she pondered. This woman, who was wearing a dignified kimono and sitting in front of a desk, was the leader of the Kamiyoshi clan that Iam had greeted during the day, Kamishiro Ruehue. At this moment, there was a piece of paper in front of Ruehue, but there were a few big words written on the paper. My daughter, colored glaze. However, after she finished writing the first line, Ruehue didn't know how to write the rest of the content. After all, she did not know how to explain to her daughter that she was going to eat the medicine sent by Iam. If that was the case, colored glaze would definitely think that her mother's brain was fried. Chapter 386. This morning, Ruehue received the Hooligan 100 Immortals pill from Iam and immediately sent it for testing. The Kamiyoshi network in Tokyo was complicated, and there were many professional testing agencies that knew about it. There was almost no possibility that they couldn't detect the composition of the medicine. However, this situation really happened. After the analysis of 3 world-class testing agencies, they came to a unified conclusion that this small pill probably came from Mars. When she saw the 3 almost identical reports, Ruehue was speechless and even couldn't believe her eyes. But this was to be expected. After all, the medicine sent by the system was indeed no different from Mars. It was pure alien technology. How could modern technology detect the composition? But the most professional testing agency couldn't detect the composition of the medicine. From a certain point of view, this was a great thing, because at least one thing was known. The effect of this pill was beyond the scope of modern pharmacology. A medicine beyond the scope of modern pharmacology. There were only 2 results after eating this kind of thing. The first was to die inexplicably, and the second was to recover inexplicably. Rui Hui herself was terminally ill. Her terminal illness was also beyond the scope of modern medicine. In the present, it could be described as magic or mystery. To fight against magic, you could only use magic. To kill mystery, you also had to rely on mystery. So after finding out that the medicine given by Iam couldn't detect the composition, Rui Hui felt that the probability of this medicine being able to cure her increased a lot. In this case, Rui Hui couldn't help but seriously consider whether to take this strange pill. There was no doubt that this was a very risky move. After all, the person who sent this medicine was the boss of the Tenmu group, the most vicious and evil woman in the world. If someone told Rui Hui before that she would consider whether to take the medicine sent by Iam, she would definitely think that person was crazy. But after today's contact, Rui Hui found that Iam seemed to have changed. The woman's temperament was still chaotic, still full of malice. But in the chaos and malice, she actually exuded a sweet aura unique to a girl in love. This made Rui Hui feel very confused. Tenmu Iam, that woman, actually gave off the feeling of a young girl in love. Is there something wrong with me? Or is there something wrong with this world? Rui Hui didn't know, and she didn't want to know for now. The only thing she wanted to know now was what to write in her suicide note. That's right, the Kanzai Imperial Garden was currently shrouded in darkness. Rui Hui sat alone in front of the desk, thinking about how to write a suicide note to her daughter. The reason why she wrote a suicide note was because Rui Hui felt that she might die. The reason why she felt that she would die was because Rui Hui intended to take the pill. The reason why Rui Hui took the pill was because she wanted to continue living in this world. The above few sentences sounded somewhat funny, but the reality was as such. If Rui Hui continues like this, she will definitely die of a terminal illness. If she didn't want to die, only Iam's medicine could save her. However, taking the medicine might also kill her. Therefore, this was a gamble with a 50% chance of success. If he won the bet, he would be able to survive. If he lost the bet, he would immediately die. Phew, forget it. It's not my style to be hesitant. I'll just eat it. After casually writing her suicide note and telling her what to do after her death, Rui Hui picked up the glass of water on the desk next to her and swallowed the special-looking pill with a gulp of water. Almost at the instant she took the pill, the master of Kamiyoshi's body suddenly trembled, and her entire body fell backward. Ugh, what's going on? Why is my body so hot? It's like there's a fire burning in my stomach? The moment she fell to the ground, Rui Hui felt that her body was shockingly hot. The terrifying heat caused her body to be unable to move, as if she was a lamb being roasted over a charcoal fire. Because Rui Hui intended to gamble with her life this time, she had already ordered everyone to leave the study, including Rucky and the other guardian ninjas who were her personal bodyguards. So when Rui Hui fell to the ground with her body burning hot, no one could save her. She could only lie on the floor with resignation, holding the suicide note that she left for her daughter in her hand. I'm going to die. Am I going to die? In a daze, Rui Hui couldn't help but think so. Legend has it that before a person died, the trajectory of their past life would flash through their eyes. This was the so-called carousel lamp. And Rui Hui also seemed to vaguely see her past, seeing her life from the Kanagi family's young mistress to the house king, and then to the Kanagi family's master. Ah, what a boring life. After reviewing her life, Rui Hui couldn't help but think so. If there's a next life, I must live more easily, more freely, and at least live for myself, not for others. Rui Hui couldn't help but have such a thought before she finally fainted. However, by the time she realized that she wasn't dead, it was already the morning of the next day. Chirp, chirp, chirp. The morning air was particularly clear, and the crisp sound of birds could be heard from outside. Rui Hui opened her eyes on the floor and felt that her body had never felt so relaxed before. Speaking of which, the high temperature after taking the pill yesterday actually only lasted for a short period of time, and Rui Hui just happened to faint. After the torment last night, Rui Hui, who woke up, felt that her entire body had become much lighter. Am I dreaming? When Rui Hui stood in front of the mirror, and saw that she looked as if she had suddenly become 10 or 20 years younger. She couldn't believe her eyes. The woman in the mirror had smooth and supple skin, and her eyes were bright and spirited. Even her hair had become darker and silkier. If it weren't for the fact that there were still traces of time in the woman's eyes, Rui Hui would have thought that she had gone back in time and returned to the time when she was still a young mistress. At Mamaheim, that guy was actually serious? Where did she get such a miraculous medicine? After understanding that her body had indeed undergone a tremendous change, Rui Hui couldn't help but recall Ayam's words from yesterday. If I say that I'm here to cooperate with you, would you believe me? Don't be in a hurry to reject me. How about you listen to my conditions first? For example, I can cure your incurable disease, and I can even let your daughter live, so that she doesn't have to be that damned house king anymore. If it was before today, Rui Hui would definitely think that Ayam was fooling her and treating her as a fool. But after personally experiencing the miraculous effects of the pill, she realized that Ayam wasn't lying. She was actually sincerely looking for her to cooperate. Now that Rui Hui's body was extremely relaxed, her incurable disease was obviously almost cured, which fully proved Ayam's sincerity. Ruyu. At this time, after Rui Hui finished washing up, she shouted towards the window. Before her voice died away, a graceful figure appeared in front of Lord Rui Hui and knelt down. Yes, what are your orders? Go and prepare a helicopter, and call Rabbit Ball. I'm going to the unrestrained Sky Tower. Ah, unrestrained Sky Tower? Lord Rui Hui, are you serious? The moment she heard this name, Ruyu's body trembled slightly, because she knew very well what this destination meant. What a joke! The head of Kamiyoshi was going to the headquarters of Tenmu Group. Wasn't this sending a sheep to the tiger's mouth? Don't worry, Rui Hui nodded and smiled. Nothing will happen, but this matter can't be known to others. You know what to do, right? Yes. Stealth was originally a ninja's specialty, so Ryu naturally wouldn't mess it up. But when she personally flew the helicopter to the center of Tokyo Bay, this guardian ninja still felt very nervous. After all, in the past so many years, the Kamiyoshi and the Tenmu clan were mortal enemies. But at this time, Lord Rui Hui seemed to have a new idea, which really surprised Ryu. However, just as Rui Hui was flying to the unrestrained Sky Tower in the helicopter, in the master's room on the top floor of the tower, the new master slowly opened his eyes. What's wrong with me? When Ryuta woke up, the first thing he saw was a strange ceiling. The ceiling had a pink girl's color, but there were many inexplicable graffiti, which looked very uncoordinated. Coupled with the golden hair doll hanging from the ceiling, it was even more terrifying. Such a strange room, probably only Ayam's bedroom in the world. At this time, Ryuta woke up from Ayam's bed in her bedroom, and when the dragon head woke up, he also felt a light breath coming from his shoulder, and the warmth hanging on half of his body. Is this the benefit of being a bad guy? Although it was dangerous, it was enjoyable. Looking at Ayam sleeping on his shoulder, Ryuta swallowed a mouthful of saliva, and then felt a sense of relief. Although the battle last night made him a little worried about his future, compared to the sense of relief at this time, it was nothing. Yes, relief. When he was with Ayam, Ryuta felt a real sense of relief, as if even if the sky fell, it would not fall on him. This was to be expected. After all, Ayam was the biggest demon in the game, and should be Ryuta's main enemy. He needed to be constantly vigilant to not be killed by this demon. But after yesterday, the demon became the person sleeping next to him, and the biggest enemy became the biggest leg. It had to be said that when he had Ayam as his leg, the feeling was not just a normal kind of good. It was good in all kinds of ways, especially when the demon closed her eyes and lay next to him. The usual evil and chaos was replaced by a peaceful sleeping face. Ryuta really felt like he was the happiest man in the world. After all, Ayam was really beautiful, and could even be said to be the most beautiful woman in the world. But it was a pity that she was usually too strong and fierce, to the point that it would make people unconsciously tense up, and unable to relax and admire this great beauty's peerless appearance. But Ayam was different after she fell asleep. At this time, She was like the world's most beautiful woman with a normal brain, and Ryudo could not help but stare at her flawless face for a long time. Do I look good? Just as Long-do was considering whether or not to wake her up, Yongji raised the corner of her mouth and asked without blinking. Well, it seemed like this girl was already awake. After being slightly shocked by Iam, Ryudo replied sincerely, "You look good, really good. There is no one in the world more beautiful than you." Glib tongue. But it makes sense, I like it. After reaching out and pulling Ryudo's head, Iam kissed him on the cheek, then stood up and put on her clothes and socks. A beauty changing clothes was a beautiful scene in the world, not to mention such a peerless beauty, with a flawless appearance and figure. So when Iam picked up a pair of black lace stockings, and was about to put them on, Ryudo could not help but almost go crazy, and wanted to die again. No, no, no. I have to control myself, or I will die on top of her sooner or later. Long-do couldn't help but feel a lingering fear when he recalled the feeling of dying last night. After a while, Iam changed into a relatively formal outfit. The elegant black dress she was wearing looked very solemn and serious, and her soft black hair fell to her waist, matched with the black lace stockings and high heels. Her every movement was dignified and elegant, as if she was an empress who was going to inspect the country. But according to what Ryudo knew, Iam usually would not dress so formally, unless something special happened. After tidying up her appearance, Iam reached out and patted Ryudo's chest, smiled and said, "An old friend will come to find me in a while. You should also tidy up and come with me to see her, my dear Minister Toshiro." Just last night, Iam had already arranged Ryudo's new identity. After joining the Heavenly Eye group, Ryudo gloriously changed from Young Master of the Rulong group to Heavenly Eye Group Minister of Weapons, which meant he replaced the position of Nikolai, who had been blown to smithereens. But compared to his new identity, Ryudo cared more about the identity of the old friend he was going to meet later. "Lord Iam, your old friend is. Although you have not seen that woman, you should be quite familiar with her. After all, you just came out of her house yesterday and tried to seduce her daughter, hehe." When she said seduce her daughter, Iam's lips curled up, and she gave Ryudo a dangerous smile. "Me? Came out of her house? Seduced her daughter? Wait, could it be that old friend is?" Just as Ryudo suddenly thought of that name, there was a knock on the door. Chapter 387. Lord Iam, may I come in? With the knock on the door, the familiar voice of Tokushima Kalhana entered the ears of Iam and Ryudo, because when Ryudo succeeded as the head of the weapons department last night, Iam summoned back the head of the guards department Kalhana, the head of the pharmacy department Yomi, and the head of the secret department Heavy Fire. It had to be said that when he saw these three bosses in the game standing beside him and becoming his colleagues last night, Ryudo felt quite strange. Although Yomi and Heavy Fire were a little puzzled by the sudden appearance of this young man who replaced Nicola's position, these colleagues also expressed friendliness to Ryudo on the surface, except for Kalhana. Kalhana didn't rush back to the investigation department today to be her own undercover chief. Instead, she asked for leave and lived in the unrestrained Sky Tower. In Ryudo's view, the reason why Kalhana deliberately lived here was most likely because of him. During the inauguration ceremony last night, Kalhana had been staring at Ryudo with a vicious gaze. Her gaze was as if she wanted to poke a hole in him. Although it was the first time Kalhana saw the young master of the Rulong group, Ryudo could understand where Kalhana's resentment against him began. After all, from the situation he saw in Red Album 2, no one survived. The head of the department had a special relationship with his boss. Ahem. It was the kind of relationship that was not known to outsiders. Kalhana was infatuated with and worshipped Iam, while Iam treated Kalhana as a pet and a toy. The relationship between the two master and servant showed a very twisted state. But there was no doubt that Kalhana's feelings for Iam were quite firm. She could even fight against the whole world for Iam. Therefore, it was not difficult to imagine what Kalhana was thinking when she found out that her master, lover, brought back a stinky man last night. Kill, 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 kill. Blow his head off with a gun. dismember him with a knife, send him flying with a car, flatten him with a tank, crush him with an airplane, and blast him into ashes with a missile. Especially after knowing that I.M. had brought Ryudo to her room to rest last night. Lin Hana had not slept for the entire night. She had been making Ryudo Kiryo's cursed dolls, and she had made 70 to 80 of them in one night. Lin Hua's anger and jealousy were visible to the naked eye. I.M. naturally understood, but she obviously didn't care at all. After all, I.M. had always been an absolutely self-centered woman. She was too lazy to care about what Lin Hua thought of Ryudo. After hearing Lin Hua knocking on the door, I.M. said indifferently, "Come in." "Yes." Before she finished speaking, Lin Hua pushed the door open and walked in. However, when she saw the young man sitting on I.M.'s bed, who had just changed into a uniform but looked tired, as if he had overworked himself last night, she immediately felt her blood pressure rise. Mother Ker. If I.M. Sama was not nearby, Lin Hua would have spat on Ryudo's face. This stinky bastard, how dare he do that with I.M. Sama? Whoa. Although she really wanted to cut Ryudo into 1,000 pieces, Lin Hua suppressed her anger and reported to I.M. Reporting to I.M. Sama, the Kamiyoshi clan's helicopter has landed at the helipad. That woman, Kaneshiro Ruehue, is heading to the living room. This was because I.M. had already reminded Lin Hua and the others yesterday that Ruehue might come to visit today. Lin Hua was not surprised by the sudden visit of the Heavenly Eye Group's archenemy. Or rather, she was too lazy to care about Ruehue now. Lin Hua's attention was mostly focused on Ryudo. It's her, Kaneshiro Ruehue. But how? Why is Madame Ruehue here? When he heard Lin Hua's words, Ryudo could not help but widen his eyes in disbelief. According to Ryudo's understanding of this world, Colored Glaze's mother, Kaneshiro Ruehue, was a very strict woman. She should be I.M.'s archenemy. If Ruehue did not die early because of a terminal illness, I.M. would not have been able to do so much in the later stages of the game. Therefore, Ruehue should be the only person who could compete with I.M. However, the only woman in this world who could compete with I.M. was sitting in the reception room of the unrestrained Sky Tower at this time. Different from Yongji's study and bedroom, which were out of tune and out of place, the reception room still looked very proper, because it was used to receive some proper people. However, when Ruehue sat elegantly on the soft sofa and held the top-grade osmanthus tea brewed by the maid, although her expression was very relaxed, the two guards behind her were not the same. Looking carefully, the two guardian ninjas, Bunkomaru and Ritsuki, were standing behind their master on the left and right, vigilantly paying attention to the surrounding situation. After all, this was the nest of the Heavenly Eye Group. It was understandable for the two to be vigilant, especially after that figure appeared. Oh, Ruehue, what a rare guest. When she walked toward Ruehue with swaying steps, I.M. could not help but show a happy smile, because from the moment Ruehue appeared here, she already knew that she had won. However, Ruehue did not first look at I.M., this old enemy, but looked at the young man who walked behind I.M. This young man is Rulong Group's young master Ryudo Kiryo? With Ruehue's connections, she naturally knew that this kid kidnapped her daughter yesterday and slept in her daughter's Kamishiro courtyard for a night. Although according to Bunkamura's report, he seemed to have done something to this kid, so he would not continue to have thoughts about Colored Glaze. But why did Ryudo appear next to Ruehue the next day? Seeing this extremely strange situation, Bunkomaru, who was behind Ruehue, almost had his eyes pop out. How is this possible? Ryudo Kiryo, he actually works for Heavenly I.M.? To be honest, although Bunkomaru confronted Ryudo for a while yesterday, he did not see that this kid actually used the same blanket as I.M. This was too ridiculous. Although this could not be blamed on Bunkomaru, because when Ryudo confronted Bunkomaru yesterday, he really did not use the same blanket as I.M. This blanket was temporarily used last night. At this moment, Ryudo was somewhat embarrassed when he saw Bunkomaru again. After all, yesterday he vowed in front of Bunkomaru that he liked Colored Glaze, but in the end, he got together with I.M. Of course, compared to Bunkomaru, who almost castrated him yesterday. Ryudo's gaze was mostly focused on Madame Ruehue. After all, she was really beautiful. Although Ruehue was Colored Glaze's mother, no matter how one looked at her, he felt that she was a beautiful woman who was not even 30 years old. At this moment, she was wearing a black-sleeved kimono with the Kamiyoshi family's double-leaf sunflower pattern printed on it. She looked calm and elegant without being overly gorgeous. At the same time, the collar and cuffs were inlaid with golden threads, adding a faint sense of luxury. This dignified appearance, coupled with her thick black hair that was tied up high with a jade hairpin, could be said to be exuding a mature feminine charm. Moreover, because Ruehue had consumed the Hooligan 100 Immortal pill, she looked even younger. Her skin was so tender that when she stood next to Colored Glaze, they looked like a pair of sisters. This Ruehue was not inferior to Ayam, who was sitting opposite her. They were both peerless beauties, the kind that could cause the downfall of a city. Oh, this feeling, am I in heaven? At this time, Ayam was sitting on the sofa beside Ryudo, Ruehue was sitting on the sofa opposite him, and Linhua was standing behind her. For a moment, he didn't know if he was dreaming. Otherwise, how could such a dreamlike scene appear? Although the three female leads in the original work were also beautiful, Colored Glaze, Yunyan, and Dunya were relatively young after all. They didn't have the almost overflowing feminine charm of Ayam, Ruehue, and Linhua. Especially the unique body fragrance and charm of mature women. It made Ryudo feel quite satisfied. Of course, he wasn't an old pervert. He was simply attracted by the three beautiful big sisters. This was a very normal thing, just when Ryudo was unmoved on the surface, but he secretly sighed in his heart that he came to the right place. Ruehue put down the teacup in her hand and said faintly, "I didn't expect that the kidnapping of my Colored Glaze yesterday was arranged by the two of you. Your acting is really good, Ryudo-kun." Originally, after Ruehue learned about yesterday's incident, she thought that Ryudo and Rulon group were also victims of Ayam's plot. Who knew that they were actually in the same group, which really made her a little upset. Especially when she thought that Ryudo, this little brat, actually dared to kidnap her baby daughter. Ruehue wanted to stab him twice in the head. After being ridiculed by Ruehue, Ryudo's face was a little red. After a while he murmured, I'm sorry, I didn't mean it." Previously, the kidnapping of Colored Glaze wasn't actually done by Ryudo. Originally, he could have pushed the blame to Ayam, the shady business, but now the shady business was in cahoots with him. So now, Ryudo had become yellow mud that fell into his crotch. Even if it wasn't shit, no one would believe it. He had to apologize to Madame Ruehue first to avoid any more trouble. Just when Ryudo was facing Ruehue, Ayam smiled and said, "Don't hold on to him. The previous incident was my idea. At that time we were still enemies, weren't we? I didn't say anything. It's not my habit to bring up old scores. Besides, for the sake of the pill, let's forget about the previous incident." Of course, Ruehue deliberately came to the unrestrained Sky Tower, this time to talk about these old matters. Moreover, her daughter Colored Glaze was scared but not in danger in the end, so there was no benefit in arguing about it. Therefore, she quickly looked at Ayam, her partner. Both Ruehue and Ayam were smart people. They both knew what it meant for the two of them to sit in the guest room of the unrestrained Sky Tower, to discuss this matter peacefully. Therefore, neither of them would talk about why they were sitting there. Instead, they directly discussed the next division of labor. "You want to cooperate with me? How do you want to cooperate? Do you want to occupy this country? That's too gentle of a word. How can we rebuild something that's already rotten without destroying it?" That makes sense. With Ruehue's intelligence and knowledge as a god, she naturally knew how many corpses were needed to complete the destruction and reconstruction mentioned by Ayam. Even so, Ruehue did not hesitate to reply, "That makes sense." Because the current her, after reincarnating, had decided to live only for herself and her daughter. As for other things, Ruehue would not care at all. To put it in a more extreme way, for example, if the lives of 200 million people in Japan were to be exchanged for Colored Glaze's future, Ruehue would not hesitate to do so. After all, compared to herself and her daughter, The lives of other unrelated people were worthless. This was the cold-bloodedness of a person of high status. And also the courage of a person who wanted to achieve great things. Seeing how resolute Ruehue's gaze became, Ayam could not help but nod slightly. She smiled and said, "In that case, I'll have to trouble you to take the position of Golden Heron first. Can you do that?" Ayam was naturally very familiar with the most ancient organization in Japan, the Yatsuki, which held most of the power in Japan. However, for a strange person like Ayam, who was ostracized by the traditional circle, it was difficult for her to get her forces deep into the inner circle of the Yatsuki. However, with Ruehue's cooperation, the situation was completely different. If Ruehue could replace the position of Iwasaki or Takahara Miyako, then these two strongest women in the world could completely erode the organization from the inside. At that time, most of the politicians would be assassinated and replaced, and the entire Japan would be in the hands of the two. Whether it was dismantling or destroying it, it would all be up to Ayam. After hearing Yongji's words, Ruehui didn't even think about it and replied, "No problem. Give me a week. I guarantee that I can pull those two guys down from their high horse. In a week, bring down the most powerful golden heron in Japan." When Ruehui said this, she was full of pride and did not consider the possibility of failure or delay at all. This confidence that seemed to not care about the world was also what Ayam liked the most about her. As expected, you were bound by too many boring things before, and now you are the real you. Yongji immediately smiled and nodded. At the same time, she said to Ruehui, "Since that's the case, I'll send the head of the weapons department of the Heavenly Eye Group to assist you. He's an extremely powerful monster." Head of weapons? Nikolai? Nikolai has retired and returned to his hometown to get married. The current head of weapons is him. After saying this, Ayam pointed at Ryudo next to her, and at the same time showed a sweet smile to the head of weapons. "Ah, head of weapons, Ryudo Kiryu, let him help me." In an instant, Ruehue was stunned, and then turned to look at the young man that Ayam called an extremely powerful monster. At the same time, Ryudo also looked at Ruehue, and for the first time, their eyes met. Chapter 388. As for Lady Ruehui, Ryudo didn't have any thoughts about her. After all, according to his previous understanding of the plot, he shouldn't have anything to do with this woman. On one hand, she was Colored Glaze's mother, and was considered an elder. On the other hand, she didn't have long to live. But an hour later, Ryudo and Ruehui were sitting in a helicopter together. In front of the cockpit, there was Rabbit Ball, who kept staring at him with a sour face. "What's going on? This is too awkward." When Ryudo and Ruehui sat in the back seat of the helicopter, their legs were almost touching each other. Ryudo couldn't help but gulp. His expression also became a bit strange. Why did Ryudo leave with Ruehui in a helicopter? Because this was Ayam Sama's order. From today onwards, Ryudo's job was to assist this kamikaze and help her become a golden heron in the shortest amount of time. In order to successfully accomplish this goal, Ryudo obtained a portion of the Spread the Martial Arts Mercenary Group's mobilization authority. This elite mercenary group that originally belonged to Ayam, coupled with the entire weapon department in his hands, Ryudo now had a lot of chess pieces in his hands. Not to mention, Ryudo also received a full 5 billion mission fee. Relying on the 5 billion mission fee, Ryudo immediately increased his attribute points to a very high level. So at this time, Ryudo's personal attribute page looked like this: name, Ryudo Kiryuich, 16 attributes. Wisdom LV4, Constitution LV5, Courage LV5, Insight LV4, Charm LV5. Title: Soft Rice Man. When there is a close female around, all attributes increase by 50%. Equipment: none. Total assets: 35 billion. Other than Wisdom and Insight that required 5 billion to level up, Constitution, Courage, and Charm were all maxed out by Ryudo. 2 days. He had only transmigrated to this world for 2 days, and his attributes had already skyrocketed. This was probably the charm of the money modifier. Of course, Even though Longdo's personal attributes were already very high, the bastard title of freeloader still made him extremely unhappy. Title Soft Rice Man. Obtained after receiving more than 5 billion from a close female. When there is a close female around, all attributes will be greatly increased. How to say this? The Soft Rice Man title was indeed very powerful. The attribute increase was very obvious, but I really don't want to be a soft rice man. Longdo didn't know whether to laugh or cry at the thought of Yongji giving him so much maintenance fee and mission fee. On one hand, he hoped that he could become stronger through his own hard work, so that he wouldn't have to rely on a woman to survive. On the other hand, he felt that the current situation was indeed very good. Of course, he was being taken care of by the world's most beautiful woman as soon as he transmigrated. She gave him status, people, and money. With such a good rich woman, there probably wouldn't be any man in the world who would be able to resist her. However, Ryudo still had some backbone. Since he had taken so many things from Ayam, he had to make some achievements as the head of the weapons department. Even if he had to work together with Ruehue Kaneshiro. To be honest, Ryudo was now somewhat afraid of Ruehue. After all, she was one of the stricter characters in the original work. So when he left with her on the helicopter and brought people to clean up the Kamiyoshi tribe, Ryudo obviously felt somewhat uncomfortable. Their destination this time was to go to the Kamiyoshi tribe and kill some of the people who had connections with the outside world. The Kamiyoshi tribe had many complicated factions. Many of its members were inextricably linked to Yatsuki Yukiyoshi. So, if they wanted to deal with Yatsuki Yukiyoshi, they would first have to deal with the spies in their family. Ruehue had already compiled a list of spies, including her younger brother Kamishiro Yoshiyuki, and her nephew filial piety Kaneshiro. According to what Ruehue knew, this father and son pair had a deep connection with the current Yatsuki Yukiyoshi, the president of the great Japanese bank, Iwasaki Yanesuk. If Ruehue wanted to deal with them, it would be best to deal with these spies as soon as possible, so that they wouldn't alert the enemy. But after all, they were Ruehue's own blood relatives. It wasn't appropriate for her to do it herself, so she could only let Ryudo do it for her. Just as Ryudo was thinking about how to deal with them when they arrived at the Kaneshiro Imperial Garden, Ruehue opened her eyes slightly and asked in a light tone, "Ryudo-kun, can I ask you for a favor?" "Ah, Mrs. Ruehue, please go ahead." After hearing Ruehue's words, Ryudo was somewhat nervous, but he immediately nodded. "I heard that you seem to have publicly declared that you like colored glaze, right? That's what happened before." Ryudo Kiryo's character originally liked Kaneshiro colored glaze, and it was the same in the original work. Many people knew about this, so Ryudo had nothing to hide. At this time, Ruehue said, "Since you are part of Ayam's faction, please don't get close to colored glaze in the future. I hope that my daughter can live a simple and happy life in the future." Understood. After being warned by Mrs. Ruehue, Ryudo could only nod dejectedly. Although Ryudo liked colored glaze, his current liking for her was limited to liking the game character. It hadn't reached the point of marrying no one else, or marrying no one else. Since he was now forced to choose the evil path, Ryudo naturally wouldn't have any ideas about colored glaze. After all, colored glaze and Ayam couldn't coexist. It was impossible to force himself to, "I want them all in this situation," so he could only accept it. Otherwise, he would most likely be chopped into 9 pieces by Ayam. Ruehue was obviously very satisfied with Ryudo's tactful attitude. She smiled and said, "Not bad, you are more mature than I thought. No wonder Ayam entrusted you with such a heavy responsibility." "It's okay, Sama trusts me more, so I have to do well." After hearing Ryudo's words, Ruehue inadvertently blinked. There's something strange. Ryudo Kiryo and Tenmu Ayam. There seems to be something strange between these two. According to Ruehue's understanding of the members of the Heavenly Eye group, most of the capable people joined Yongji because of their admiration. So when they mentioned the boss, they all had a very respectful expression. But Ryudo was different. When he mentioned Ayam, there was almost no respect. Instead, he seemed to be very close to her. This feeling was completely different from the attitude towards a boss, a superior, but more like the attitude towards his lover. That's right, lover. In fact, Ryudo had already subconsciously regarded Ayam as such. After all, Ayam was really his woman now, and the two had completely completed the most intimate contact last night. In addition, Ayam was really good to Ryudo, giving him whatever he wanted. The human heart was made of flesh, so Ryudo would naturally treat her well in return. That feeling was more or less treating her as his lover. This subtle emotional change obviously couldn't be hidden from Ruehue's eyes. It can't be? Could it be he's Ayam's lover? Thinking of this, Ruehue carefully thought about Ayam's attitude towards Ryudo in the living room. Thinking about it carefully, it did seem to be more or less ambiguous. It didn't seem like a normal female superior and male subordinate. Aha! If that's the case, I have to build a good relationship with Ryudo-kun. Since he was able to receive Ayam's love, it meant that he must have his own outstanding qualities. And since he's Ayam's lover, I can try to use Ryudo to instill some ideas into Ayam. I'll do that. Although the current Ruehue had reached a comprehensive cooperation with Ayam, it didn't mean that Ruehue didn't have her own thoughts. Although she wouldn't backstab Ayam or drag Ayam down, she was obviously very willing to fight for her own interests and let herself have more say in this alliance. So when the two got off the helicopter and were walking towards Kamishiro Imperial Garden, Ruehue used a gentle tone to say to Ryudo, "Ryudo-kun, you don't have to be polite here. Just treat this place as your own home." Is that so? Just as Long Do was about to smile and chat with Ruehui, who had suddenly become gentle, he saw a man hurriedly walking out of a house not far away. It was a middle-aged man who looked to be about 50 years old, but his body was still tall and straight. His eyes were as sharp as an eagle looking for prey. This is Kamishiro Yoshiyuki. Because he had played the game before, Long Do naturally recognized this man and knew who he was. The most important thing was that this man was the person Ryudo was going to deal with this time. Kaneshiro Ruehue's brother, Kaneshiro Colored Glaze's uncle, and at the same time, he was also Kamiyoshi's scum. At this time, this Kamiyoshi scum quickly came to Ruehue's side and asked his sister while sweating, "Ruehue, where did you go so early in the morning? Why didn't you turn on your phone? I couldn't find you anywhere. You scared me to death." "I'll leave it to you." Ruehue didn't answer her brother's question. Instead, she sighed and walked into the house, not even looking at Yoshiyuki. "What's going on? Who's this brat?" Seeing that his sister didn't even look at him for some reason, Yoshiyuki wanted to chase after her and ask her some questions. But before he could take a step forward, a hand that was like an iron pincer grabbed his neck. "Although we don't have any grudges, I have to kill you. I'm sorry." At that moment, Yoshiyuki heard a young voice coming from behind him. Then, there was a crisp cracking sound, and the world in his eyes tilted greatly. This is... thud. When Ryudo let go of his hand, Kamishiro Yoshiyuki's body, whose neck had been broken, fell to the ground and lost all signs of life. After killing Yoshiyuki, Ryudo ordered the mercenaries who suddenly appeared behind him without looking back. "Take him away and get rid of him." Yes, the mercenaries didn't hesitate. They immediately carried Yoshiyuki's body and walked away. Perhaps they were planning to sink into the familiar Tokyo Bay. Perhaps it was because of his LV5 courage. But Ryudo didn't feel any discomfort after killing this man. Instead, he felt a slight sense of relief. "No problem, with my current ability, it's enough to deal with most situations. In this world, it's either you die or I die. I mustn't be soft-hearted." Just like this, after killing the first target, Kamishiro Yoshiyuki, Ryudo led the Conquering the World mercenaries and directly walked into the Kamishiro Imperial Garden. Under the instruction of Ruehue, almost all the Guardian ninjas, who were originally protecting the Kanzaki family members, disappeared without a trace, and the other guards were also gathered in a certain place, so that it would be convenient for Ryudo and the others to make a move. "Who are you? Ah, help, help, someone come. Please don't kill me. You can have as much money as you want." That afternoon, There was a bloody storm in the Kamishiro Imperial Garden. The group of clansmen and guards, and even the ninjas who were previously identified by Ruehui as having connections with outsiders, were mercilessly slaughtered. Fresh blood dyed this land, which was originally considered very sacred, red. Occasionally, there would be waves of panic screams coming from the courtyard. Such a situation could be said to be poles apart from the usual tranquil and peaceful Kamishiro Imperial Garden. However, the current Ruehui was very satisfied with this situation. She sat alone at the tea table in her room, looking through the window at the familiar osmanthus tree, with a faint smile on her face. On the tea table, the fragrance of the tea leaves covered the faint smell of blood in the house. Not long after, there was a knock on the door of the room, and a somewhat tired voice came from outside. "Madam Ruehui, I'm done here, I'll go back first." After recognizing the voice of Ryudo, Ruehui smiled and said, "Don't be in a hurry to leave, come in and sit." "Ah, she wants me to go in and sit?" Suddenly, Ryudo was clearly confused. After all, this was Ruehui's boudoir. Wasn't it a bit inappropriate for a man like him to go in? But since she had already invited him, Ryudo didn't want to go in. So Ryudo pushed the door and walked in. He came to the tea table and sat in front of Ruehui, with his hands on his knees, looking like an obedient child. This Ryudo Kiryu was completely different from the cold-blooded killer who went on a killing spree in the Kamishiro Imperial Garden today. So much so that Ruehui couldn't help but show a funny expression. "Ryudo-kun, it's been hard on you today, you." Beep, beep, beep. However, just as Ruehui was about to chat with Ryudo and connect a little, a hurried voice came from Ruehui's phone. "Emergency call." Ruehui didn't dare to neglect, but quickly picked up the phone, turned around and whispered, "What's the matter?" "Master Ruehui." Miss Colored Glaze suddenly ran back. "She has already broken through the front door and is running toward your bedroom." What? The moment she heard that name, Ruehui couldn't help but slightly open her mouth. If it was under normal circumstances, it wouldn't be a problem for a daughter to come to her mother's bedroom. But now there was a man in the bedroom. If Colored Glaze saw Ruehui and Ryudo in the boudoir, then how could she explain this? Chapter 389. This, Colored Glaze actually came back. This was too bad. The timing was too good. Because today she sent people to clean up the Kamiyoshi group of moles. Now the family was in a bloodbath. So Ruehui really didn't want her daughter to come back at this time. After all, Colored Glaze was very smart. Even if she smelled a trace of blood at home, it would arouse her suspicion. Today's matter was too bloody and too realistic. Ruehui didn't want her daughter to be involved at all. Whether it was the internal conflict of the Kamiyoshi group, the cooperation with the Heavenly Eye group, or the various bloody things that were about to happen in the outside world. These things weren't something a student like Colored Glaze should care about. Ruehui just wanted her daughter to live happily as a normal person. But who knew that Colored Glaze seemed to have noticed something and actually hurried back home. This was troublesome. After hanging up the phone, Ruehui sighed slightly, then hurriedly said to Ryudo, "Ryudo-kun, hurry up and leave, my daughter is back." Daughter? Colored Glaze. When he heard this name, Ryudo was somewhat embarrassed. After all, not long ago he righteously said that he would save Colored Glaze from the sea of bitterness, but in the end, he suddenly became the Heavenly Eye Group's hired thug. But from a certain point of view, Ryudo helped IM destroy this country, which could be considered as saving Colored Glaze from the sea of bitterness. When the time comes, when Japan is destroyed, Shinto will naturally be finished, and the king position of the Kamiyoshi will also disappear. At that time, Colored Glaze wouldn't have to think about being locked in the shrine after the age of 18, and could live as a normal person in the outside world. But that was off topic. The most important thing for Ryudo now was, "This is my escape route." So after nodding to Madame Ruehui, he quickly opened the door and tried to rush out. But it was too late. Just as he opened the door halfway, he saw a familiar figure running towards him. It was Colored Glaze. It was Colored Glaze Kanzaki. She was running down the corridor at an extremely fast speed. She could run 100 meters in about 20 seconds. Although Ryudo wasn't running fast, because there was only one path outside the corridor, Colored Glaze's figure had already blocked his escape route. I can't leave through the main entrance. Seeing that the front door was blocked, Ryudo hurriedly closed the door and tried to escape from the back window. But just as he was about to open the window, Ruehui hurriedly said, "Wait! For safety reasons, the window is sealed." After all, Ruehui was the leader of the Kamiyoshi clan, and there were many people who wanted to take her life. Therefore, even the windows in his room were completely sealed with bulletproof glass. There was no way to open them at all. Good Lord, now it's asking for directions. Just as Ryudo was in a hurry to escape, Ruehui hurriedly said, "Under the bed. There's a secret passage under the bed. I prepared it for emergencies to escape." Very good. Ryudo hurriedly ran under Ruehui's bed. With a slide kick and a roll he rolled in. Because Ruehui's room was usually cleaned by the servants, Ryudo didn't cause any dust or noise after rolling in. Creak. Ho ho ho. After a few seconds, accompanied by a slight sound and panting, Colored Glaze's figure appeared in his mother's room. Ho ho. Ho ho. Ho ho. Mother-sama. Now, what's going on? Why did filial piety cousin send this message to me? When Colored Glaze came in, she raised her phone and asked Ruehui while panting. Message? Filial piety cousin? Could it be? After seeing the contents of Colored Glaze's phone, she finally understood why her daughter would barge in at this time, without saying anything. Because in the message that filial piety Kanzaki sent to Colored Glaze, there was only one simple but terrifying sentence. This sentence was, "Help! Something happened at home. Many people were killed." From the fact that the word "bay" was even typed wrongly, filial piety Kanzaki must have sent the message in a state of extreme panic. But this wasn't surprising, after all it was true. That afternoon, Ryudo did indeed carry out an unprecedented purge of Kamiyoshi's traitors. The total number of people killed was more than 30, including Yoshiyuki and filial piety Kanzaki. In fact, not long after filial piety Kanzaki sent this message to Colored Glaze, this filial son was also dug out from the warehouse by Ryudo and had his neck broken. They should have all been thrown into Tokyo Bay by now. However, Ruehui obviously couldn't tell Colored Glaze about this, so she could only smile and say, "Filial piety Kanzaki must be joking. You actually believe this kind of thing? Who would randomly kill people at home? I'm still here, aren't I? Is that so? But on the way back, I seem to have smelled some blood? That's because the family hunted a wild deer, and the chef was preparing the venison." Really? Colored Glaze looked at her mother, who was exactly the same as usual, and asked in a puzzled tone. "Then where is filial piety Kanzaki cousin?" "I'm not too sure. He usually doesn't live at home. You know, that guy loves to play very much." Saying this, Ruehui couldn't help but sigh, as if she felt that there was nothing she could do about her nephew. Logically speaking, there was nothing wrong with Ruehui's way of dealing with it. Her expression was also very natural. Moreover, this Kamiyoshi Kanzaki was right. Who could casually kill people in Kamiyoshi Garden? Except for herself. Really? Could it really be a misunderstanding? At this time, Colored Glaze Kanzaki looked at her mother with a puzzled expression. In fact, she was almost convinced, after all, someone killing Kamiyoshi Kanzaki in Kamiyoshi Garden. This kind of thing was a bit too ridiculous. After all, in Colored Glaze's eyes, her mother was an omnipotent existence. But just as Colored Glaze's gaze swept over the small tea table not far away, her eyes slightly narrowed. On the small tea table was a full set of jade tea set. The teapot was still emitting obvious steam, and the tea in the 2 cups had not been emptied. But the problem was that Ruehui was clearly in the room right now. So why were there 2 cups on the tea table? Even the tea in the teapot was still warm, which meant that the other person drinking tea here didn't leave for too long. Or rather, didn't leave at all? Shit. The moment Colored Glaze's gaze swept over the tea table, Ruehui also noticed this loophole. Just now, because she hurriedly guided Ryudo-kun to leave, Ruehui forgot to clean up his tea set. After all, Ruehui was the owner of Kamiyoshi, and she usually didn't need to clean up the tea set herself. Usually after drinking, she would let the servants come in to clean up. She didn't expect that because of this habit, she would let the cat out of the bag. Just now someone was drinking tea here. After looking for a few seconds, Colored Glaze couldn't help but turn her head to ask her mother. According to Colored Glaze's knowledge, there weren't many people who could enter her mother's boudoir. It could even be said that it was very rare. And the people who could sit here and drink tea, that was even rarer. Even her daughter had never heard of it. If there were guests, Rui Hui would usually invite them to the tea room to drink tea and chat, and would not sit in the bedroom. After all, the bedroom was a very private place, and it was not suitable for entertaining ordinary guests. Usually, the people who could enter the bedroom were the few old guardian ninjas, and some old servants, such as Rui Hui and the like, and Rui Hui would not drink tea with them here. Yes, there is, it's my a friend. After being discovered by her daughter that there was someone in her bedroom, Rui Hui couldn't help but feel a headache coming on, so she could only try to cover it up. But now that Rui Hui looked like she was having a headache, Colored Glaze had other thoughts. Speaking of which, Mother seems to be completely different today. At this time, Colored Glaze carefully looked at Rui Hui's face, and seemed to have discovered something special. Although Rui Hui usually looked very dignified and elegant, virtuous and magnanimous, she was still young after all. Not only was her skin not as smooth and firm as Colored Glaze's, but she also didn't look very lively. But today, Rui Hui was different. Her skin suddenly became much better, and she was radiant and full of vitality, as if she suddenly became a few decades younger. This Rui Hui made Colored Glaze feel a little unfamiliar. She didn't feel like her mother, but more like an older sister that she hadn't seen in a long time. Why did Mother suddenly become so much younger? She looked completely different now. At this moment, Colored Glaze's mind began to think carefully. Mother suddenly showed signs of becoming younger. The double teacup in the bedroom, and her flustered look right now. If she thought about it all together, she would come to a strange conclusion. This conclusion was the master of Kamiyoshi, Colored Glaze's mother, seemed to probably have a man. Although this conclusion sounded ridiculous, it was the conclusion that Colored Glaze felt was the most believable. Why did she suddenly feel so much younger? And she looked so radiant. Because with the nourishment of love, she naturally looked different. Why was there a double teacup in the bedroom? Because someone was drinking tea with Rui Hui here just now. Why would this matter make Rui Hui panic in front of her daughter? Because she didn't want her daughter to see her lover. Good heavens! Everything was right. For a moment, Colored Glaze couldn't help but take a deep breath. But she still nodded to her mother and said, "Mother, actually I shouldn't interfere in your private life. No matter what, I wish you happiness." Rui Hui was stunned when she suddenly received her daughter's blessings. My private life? Wishing me a happy life. Wait, what did that mean? Because Colored Glaze's thoughts were too jumpy, Rui Hui couldn't react to what she was saying. But Rui Hui was also a rare intelligent person. She could see that her daughter knew that there was someone in her bedroom not long ago. And with the words private life and happiness just now, it didn't take long for her to understand what Colored Glaze was thinking. It can't be. Does she think that I'm hiding a man at home? The moment she understood, Rui Hui felt like she was dumbfounded. She hurriedly explained, "Wait, Colored Glaze, actually All right, mother. This isn't something that can't be exposed. I haven't seen father since I was young, so I won't mind you. Cough cough. Anyway, that's it. I'll leave first." Before she finished speaking, Colored Glaze ran out like a wisp of smoke, closing the door on her way out. After all, according to Colored Glaze's deduction, her mother's lover should still be in the room. Although she didn't know where he was hiding, her sudden intrusion should have brought them quite a bit of trouble. But then again, her mother was also welcoming her own spring. This feeling was really strange. That can't be my biological father, right? When she left, Colored Glaze couldn't help but complain in her heart. But at the same time, she felt a little excited. Ever since Colored Glaze was very young, she had always been curious about how Rui Hui gave birth to her. Because that man's name wasn't left behind in the Kamiyoshi family. Chapter 390. What happened that day was very awkward for both Ruehui and Ryudo. But Ruehui was an adult after all. So she quickly recovered from the awkwardness and acted as if nothing had happened and sent Ryudo out the door. Ryudo-kun, nothing happened just now, you should know that. Before sending Ryudo off, Ruehui showed a gentle smile and said to him in a gentle tone, "What are you talking about, Mrs. Ruehui? I don't understand. I came here to work today, nothing else happened." Ryudo, who was already quite intelligent, was also an expert at pretending to be confused, so he immediately acted like he didn't know anything and nodded to Ruehui. "Phew. Really, I didn't expect something like this to happen. If I knew about this, she would probably laugh at me." Seeing Ryudo leave in the Ministry of War's exclusive vehicle, Ruehui couldn't help but cover her face. Of course, her thoughts were absolutely correct. That night, when Ayam found out about Ruehui and her daughter's argument, she immediately rolled left and right on the bed while laughing like a little girl who hadn't grown up yet. Pfft. Ha ha. Kanzaki Ruehui. That Ruehui actually. Her daughter thought that you had an affair with her. Ha 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 ha. Her laughter was wild and violent, making people feel like there was a level 18 typhoon in the room. Her wild laughter made Ryudo feel a bit creepy, so much so that his sitting posture on the desk not far away looked awkward. But Ryudo still tried his best to explain. "It's a misunderstanding, it's all a misunderstanding. There's really nothing special." "Is that so? It's really a misunderstanding?" But after hearing Ryudo's words, Ayam climbed up from the bed with a smile, came behind him, and wrapped her arms around his neck. The moment Ayam hugged him from behind, Ryudo couldn't help but gulp, but he still turned around and asked, "What else? Don't you think it's because your charm is too strong? I don't think Ruehui would casually invite people into her bedroom for tea." As Ayam spoke, she reached out and pinched Ryudo's face as if she was pinching a toy. Of course, Ayam's words weren't without reason, because Ryudo's charm attribute had already reached LV5 charm, Extreme Superman. This level of charm was like magic in the eyes of ordinary people. It could easily make people like trust, worship, and other emotions. Speaking of which, Ryudo had fully experienced the effects of the charm attribute in today's work. Although he was the director of the Heavenly Eye Group's weapon department, because of his terrifying charm, all the members of the weapon department immediately trusted him. After all, this level of charm could be used indiscriminately on men and women. Even men would unconsciously have a good impression of Ryudo, not to mention women. Most people would easily fall in love with him. Therefore, Ruehui's admiration of Ryudo was more or less influenced by his magical charm. Although it wasn't as serious as others, it wasn't to the point of falling in love with him directly. "You don't seem to be jealous at all." Longdo casually pulled Yongji into his embrace when he sensed the relaxed tone in her voice. He looked at her devastatingly beautiful face and asked, "What about you?" Logically speaking, if her man was dragged into the bedroom for tea by another woman, as a woman, she should feel jealous or angry. But it was really difficult to describe her as an ordinary woman. In the next moment, she even said something that shocked the heavens and earth, and made ghosts and gods weep. "Why should I be jealous? I like you and I also like her. If you can drag her to the bed, I'll be more than happy." Seeing Ayam's smiling face, Ryudo almost said, "Are you crazy?" But thinking about the plot of Ayam and Lin Hua in Red Album 2, No Survivors, this woman seemed to have always been a double-edged sword, so it didn't seem strange. However, Ryudo didn't think that Ayam, this double-edged sword, had always been interested in Ruehui. When he thought of the scene of Ayam and Ruehui, these two beauties, chatting together, Ryudo couldn't help but take a deep breath. That kind of special scene must be the most beautiful scenery in the world. It was probably only possible to see it with a bug in the game. After sensing Longdo's intention, Yongji, who was in his arms, smiled and said, "What? Are you interested? That's Colored Glaze's mother. Why would I have that kind of idea? Really? But as far as I know, Ruehui doesn't have a husband, and she should still be a virgin." What? Really? Regarding the matter of Ruehui and Colored Glaze, This was information that was not provided in the original game plot. So Ryudo couldn't help but shout out in surprise after hearing it. Of course it's true. So she should lack the nourishment of a man. You can give her more love. That kind of woman will soon be hooked. Don't joke, I won't do that. Ryudo shook his head and said righteously. You really won't? Absolutely not. Then why don't we make a bet? What bet? Within a month, you will eat Ruehui, or you will be eaten by her. Are you that sure? Because I will do something behind your back. Don't look at me like that, I'm crazy, don't you know? Hee. Kiss. Suddenly, Ayam kissed Ryudo's face, and then collapsed in his arms as if she had no bones. She smiled and said, But that's in the future, now it's my time, shouldn't you serve me well? Hiss. Phew. Seeing the seductive smile on the face of the witch in his arms, Ryudo first took a deep breath, then picked up the vitality potion on the table next to him and drank it all in one go. Then he hugged Ayam and threw her on the bed. That night, it was another night of troubles. Although it was a happy trouble, troubles were still troubles. So when Ryudo reported to the Kamishiro Imperial Garden the next day, what appeared in Ruehui's eyes was a slightly haggard face. Logically speaking, a 16 or 17-year-old boy like Ryudo should be full of energy, like the rising sun. But in Ruehui's eyes, Ryudo looked like he was about to burn out, like he was about to become the evening sun. Are you okay? Do you want to take a rest? Originally, Ryudo came over to discuss with Ruehui about how to deal with Golden Heron Iwasaki Yanasuke, but seeing him like he was about to die, Ruehui couldn't bear it anymore. I'm fine, don't worry, I can do it. Ryudo smiled at Ruehui with two big dark circles under his eyes. No, if this goes on, will he suddenly die? When Ryudo received his mission and brought a group of guardian ninjas and Fujiwara to investigate Iwasaki's residence and his movements, it would be easier to assassinate him. Ruehui couldn't help but feel slightly worried about the future of the young boy. Without a doubt, Ryudo should be Ayam's man, and only that which could turn a 16 or 17-year-old boy into this. But what should I do? I don't think I can help him, right? Do I have to ask Ayam to control herself? That would be too stupid. Thinking of this, Ruehui sighed slightly. However, Ruehui immediately thought of a person who might be able to help at this time. Ryue, is Ryue here? Yes, what can I do for you? Before the voice fell, a graceful figure landed in front of Ruehui. As a guardian ninja, and a female ninja, Ryue should be very knowledgeable about this kind of thing. After all, female ninja have a special course related to men. So Ruehui asked. Ryue, actually I want to ask. Originally, Ruehui wanted to ask, do you know how to enhance a man's energy so that he won't suddenly die? But when the words came to her mouth, she suddenly realized that something was wrong. Wait, why do I have to ask so many questions about whether the Dragon Do Lord will suddenly die? What does this have to do with me? After thinking for a few seconds, Ruehui asked Ryue to leave first, and she didn't want to ask about this matter. Speaking of which, Ruehui and Ryudo were neither relatives nor friends, and the two were just colleagues. It was quite awkward to talk about this kind of thing. And on the same night, Ryudo brought people to understand Iwasaki's situation thoroughly, and planned to take action the next day to completely eradicate this Yatsuki Yukijin Heron. After discussing the countermeasures and sending Ryudo away, Ruehui also specifically told him to rest early tonight, and not to go to bed late. Although Ryudo also agreed, he knew in his heart that it was not in his control at all, whether he could go to bed early or not. To put it bluntly, it still depended on Ayam's mood. He didn't know if that woman was addicted to the taste of meat, but recently, after eating meat, she pulled Ryudo to accompany her, as if she didn't care about her life. That night was no exception. The result of this was that when Ryudo came again the next day, Ruehui saw an even more haggard face. Looking at that face, Ruehui suddenly felt her anger rising. Ayam, you bastard, you're too much, aren't you? He's a 16 or 17-year-old young man. Why did you make him look like this? She didn't know if it was because Ryudo's charm was too high, or because he was the same age as her daughter. When Ruehui saw this child's miserable state, She couldn't help but feel heartache for him. That Madame Hui, I'm going to go now. No, today's plan is cancelled. You're not allowed to go anywhere. Just as Ryudo was about to carry out the mission to assassinate Iwasaki with a frown, Hui forcefully pulled his hand and pulled him to a guest room not far away. This tug caused Long Do to be a little confused. But not long after, Ryudo was brought to a bedroom with a bed on the floor and incense burning beside the bed. Hui pulled him to the side of the bed and pulled open the quilt, and righteously ordered, "Lie down, have a good rest. After you've rested enough, you can go out to carry out the mission." This doesn't seem to be a good idea. You were sent by Iam to assist me, so you should listen to my orders. Quickly lie down. Without waiting for Ryudo to refute, Hui forcefully pushed the boy in, and personally knelt beside the bed to guard. What kind of situation is this? For a moment, Ryudo felt that the scene seemed to have become strange. He was lying on the soft bed, next to Madame Hui's graceful and luxurious figure, and his nose could still smell the elegant fragrance. Speaking of which, the scene was somewhat ambiguous. But in fact, Ryudo didn't have any special thoughts about Madame Hui before. He just treated her as an elder, and treated her with respect. But when he thought of what Iam said before, Hui doesn't have a husband. She lacks the nourishment of a man. You will have sex in a month, and so on. He couldn't help but start to think. Could it be that Madame Hui, she really? After turning his head slightly and looking at the mature body wrapped in the black and red kimono, Ryudo felt his face turn red, and hurriedly closed his eyes and didn't dare to look again. It had to be said that Yongji was indeed a witch. In terms of bewitching people, she really had the skills of a witch. Originally, Ryudo's calm attitude toward Madame Hui was destroyed by Iam's words last night. It even planted a strange seed in Ryudo's heart. This seed has been deeply buried in his heart, and the next step was to wait for time to irrigate it, and it could wait for the day of germination. This was also arranged by Iam in advance. Calculation. Everything was a calculation. Since last night, Iam had been calculating Ryudo and Hui at the same time. Iam knew that Hui had a daughter, so that woman had a bit of maternal instinct. In addition, Ryudo and Colored Glaze were similar in age. As long as Ryudo looked pitiful, it was easy to evoke Hui's maternal instinct. Judging from Hui's concern for him, Iam's calculation was obviously very successful. But at this time, Ryudo's face was red, but Hui thought it meant something else. His face seemed to be very red. Could it be a fever? Thinking of this, Hui reached out to touch the boy's forehead, wanting to check his temperature. But she found that her palm was a little hot because she had been pulling Ryudo, which may cause the temperature to be inaccurate. Hui subconsciously lowered her head and used her smooth forehead to touch Ryudo's forehead. How to describe it? This was actually a relatively familiar action for Hui. When she was young, every time Colored Glaze had a fever, Hui would check the temperature like this. However, Hui had forgotten that the one lying on the ground wasn't her daughter, Liuli, but another man. A man who had been instigated by Yongji's words to the point where his head was slightly feverish. At that moment, Ryudo only felt a cold and soft object touch his head. He unconsciously opened his eyes and saw that Madame Hui's face was actually very close to his. Although Hui stretched her head from the side, the two heads were very close, and the intimate action made Ryudo's face burn even more. Chapter 391. Although Ryudo's body temperature was rising because of Hui's proximity, she didn't seem to be aware of it. Your forehead temperature is so high. You seem to have a fever. Wait a moment. After lifting her head, Hui shook her head with a bitter smile, then quickly left the room and asked the servants to prepare cold water and a towel. Although Hui didn't usually take care of people, she was quite good at taking care of people, especially when she took care of Ryudo, who didn't dare to move because of the fever. Her careful actions made Ryudo want to cry. In the next hour, Hui's achievements included but were not limited to the following. She wanted to use a cold towel to put on Ryudo's forehead, but accidentally knocked over the basin of cold water on his head. She was about to feed Long Do the medicine when she took the wrong medicine. She mixed the medicine for menstrual irregularities with warm water and gave it to him. She wanted to adjust the blanket for him, but the corner of the blanket fell on the incense, causing the entire blanket to burn. I'm sorry, I haven't done this in a long time, I'm not used to it. Looking at Ryuto, who was speechless, Rue Hui's face unconsciously turned red. But it was the truth. Rue Hui didn't take care of people for so many years. After all, she was the master of Kamiyoshi, so she didn't have to do most of the things herself. In addition, Colored Glaze's health was also very good in recent years, and she rarely had any pain or illness, so Rue Hui naturally didn't have the opportunity to take care of others. But then again, even when Colored Glaze was young, Rue Hui's ability to take care of others was quite poor. The reason why Liuli was still afraid of water, even after she grew up, was because when her mother was bathing her when she was young, she slipped and fell into the pool. She would never forget that feeling for the rest of her life. Psychological trauma +1. So right now, Ryuto should feel lucky that he was still alive after being taken care of by Rue Hui. This was not an easy thing to do. But even so, Ryuto didn't complain about the care of the lady next to him, but silently endured a lot of messy care torture. It's okay, Mrs. Rue Hui. Thanks to your care, I'm much better now. Looking at Rue Hui's blushing face, Ryuto said with a smile. Although Rue Hui's actions just now had been very clumsy, she was indeed sincere, and there was nothing to criticize. Is that so? That's great. After seeing Ryuto's face seem to be a lot better, Rue Hui couldn't help but show a relieved expression. Long Do felt that his energy had recovered a little after messing around, so he asked, "Can I get up now?" "Not yet. There's still one last step. Ryue, come here." Yes. Following Rue Hui's order, the female ninja with the mask on her face appeared beside the two of them. When she appeared this time, Rue Suki was holding a large cloth bag in her hand. After the cloth bag was opened, there were many golden needles of different lengths inside. What is this? This is the secret acupuncture technique passed down in the family of the Guardian Ninja. It was learned from another ancient country. It can make your body produce an energy called ki, strengthen the body, and reduce the burden. The chi that Rue Hui was talking about was the thing that warriors cultivated through cultivation. However, if they relied on acupuncture, they could activate it faster. Ryuto was often oppressed by Ayam, causing him to be worse day by day. Since Rue Hui couldn't work on Ayam, she could only work on Ryuto. According to Rue Hui finally asked Rue Hui shamelessly, as long as the ki in the young man's body was activated, then he could have a stronger body, which was the so-called activation of ki. Although Ryuto didn't believe in this, since Mrs. Rue Hui said so, he could only let Rue Suki pierce his body with golden needles. This feeling was really strange. After being densely pierced with a lot of needles by Rue Suki, Ryuto couldn't help but take a deep breath. He only felt as if there was an electric current flowing around in his body. It had to be said that Rue Hui asked her guardian ninja to perform acupuncture on Ryuto. It was just a coincidence, but this time it happened. After resting for half a day, Long Do returned to the unfettered sky tower. Only then did he realize that there was an additional chi opening rate in his system. Furthermore, there were a bunch of techniques available for purchase in the shop. My goodness, now Ryuto lacked everything, but he didn't lack money. Therefore, the young man went on a shopping spree and bought 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 and now, Long Do could finally raise his head and be a human. That night, the young man was valiant and high-spirited, and he directly defeated Ayam. When Ryuto returned to the Kamishiro Imperial Garden, the next morning, What appeared in front of Rue Hui was a spirited and high-spirited face. Ryudo-kun, you look much better than yesterday, that's great. Thank you very much for Mrs. Rue Hui's care. Thank you very much. Speaking of this, the two looked at each other and smiled, only to feel that the distance between them was pulled closer. Of course, Ryudo and Rue Hui's relationship wasn't purely personal. They still had to cooperate to carry out various tasks. Especially when Rue Hui wanted to quickly ascend the Golden Heron. Ryudo also hurriedly helped her clear all the obstacles, and began to lead the Guardian Ninja and the Fujoshi teams to set off a bloody storm in Tokyo. On the evening of the third day, the Great Nippon Bank CEO Iwasaki's body was found dead of a heart attack in his house. As for how the CEO of the Great Nippon Bank died, people had different opinions, but some people in high positions had already smelled something different. There was no doubt that Iwasaki didn't die of a heart attack, but of murder. It wasn't difficult to prove this inference, because on that night, many members of the Yatsuki Dark Crow were threatened by a group of black-clothed people. In tomorrow's meeting, if you don't agree to Kaneshiro Rue Hui's proposal to become the Golden Heron, then wait to collect your family and your own corpse. After kidnapping the family of the CEO of Mitsui & Company, Ryudo mercilessly said this to the CEO over the phone, and then hung up without waiting for a reply. That night, among the 12 Dark Crows, except for Kyoji of the Tsukujiri group, most of the others were threatened, and even had their families wiped out. One of the Dark Crow's bosses was very dissatisfied after his family was kidnapped, and directly went to the investigation department to request to capture the culprit, and the result was self-evident. After all, the investigation department, and even the entire Metropolitan Police Department, were all people from the Tenmu group, and asking them to deal with Ryudo and the others was difficult to describe other than seeking death. In the end, Tsukujiri Kyoji, who was Rue Hui's old friend, also agreed to this request in a half-threatened state. Rue Hui, do you really plan to continue doing this? Looking at the woman sitting in front of him, Kyoji couldn't help but feel a chill down his spine. The Kaneshiro Rue Hui of the past wasn't like this. Although she was strict in her ways, she was still a good person at heart. So how could she possibly come up with such a plan that focused on threats and murder? According to what Kyoji knew, not only did Rue Hui kill Iwasaki in order to seize power, she also directly and indirectly caused the deaths of more than 100 people. It could be said that her hands were stained with blood, and she had a huge debt of blood. But facing her old friend's question, Rue Hui only laughed coldly and said, Kyoji, this country is already rotten, and the rotten meat naturally needs to be cut off, so that there can be a chance for new life, right? Seeing as we've been friends for so long, I'll give you a suggestion. Tomorrow, hurry up and send all your family members overseas, because this country is about to welcome a new storm, and if you don't want to get involved, leave as soon as possible. Although Kyoji felt that Rue Hui's recent actions were already quite exaggerated, Rue Hui knew that this was just the appetizer. When Rue Hui really climbed up to the Golden Heron position and worked with the Tenmu Corporation to completely take over the Yatsuki, Tenmu IM's actions would truly be a bloodbath. At that time, many of the country's upper echelons would be wiped out, including the Prime Minister, Cabinet, Parliament, and so on. No one would be able to escape alive, especially after the Tenmu Corporation completely took control of this country. The biggest cleansing would come from the bomb that was still under construction, the sixth demon's wrath. If that bomb exploded, it would be enough to completely destroy this country, and over 80% of Japan would sink into the sea. That was why Rue Hui told Kyoji to quickly send his family members overseas, so that they wouldn't be caught in the crossfire. Damn it, crazy. These people are really crazy. Seeing that Rue Hui wasn't joking with him, Kyoji could only curse in his heart. But there was nothing he could do. That's right, it wasn't just Kyoji who was helpless, many people were helpless as well. Rue Hui was originally extremely intelligent, but because of the restrictions of the Kamiyoshi and the Yatsuki, she couldn't use all of her abilities. Now, with the help of IM and Ryudo, she completely let herself go. and Ruehui instantly became another witch, a witch whose style of doing things wasn't inferior to Ayam's. Therefore, at noon the next day, Ruehui brought Ryudo and a group of followers to the Iwasaki mansion, and crowned herself with the crown in the upper-level meeting room, where Iwasaki Yanosuke's body was placed. After the unfortunate death of the Iwasaki clan, the empty golden heron position will be taken by me, Ruehui Kamishiro. Who will take it? Who objects? In the meeting room, Ruehui looked at all the night crows around her with an elegant smile, as well as the golden heron Takaharumiya, who came to participate in the meeting on the other side of the TV screen. Although most of the night crows were furious, they had no choice but to agree to Ruehui's suggestion of taking over the position of golden heron for the time being. Damn it, Ruehui Kamishiro, just you wait. After we bring back our families, we will definitely get our revenge. When Ruehui took the golden chain that symbolized the golden heron, most of the night crows couldn't help but turn their heads away, not wanting to see this woman flaunting her power. On the other side of the screen, Takaharumiya, the other golden heron, who had been watching the entire meeting, smiled and said, "Not bad, Kanzaki Reich. You've finally gotten what you wanted. Congratulations." From Takaharumiya's expression, although he was smiling, his eyes were cold. Obviously, this golden heron was also very unhappy with Ruehui's actions. After all, she was the one who killed Iwasaki, and this woman even took everything from Iwasaki's body. This was simply outrageous. She didn't take the rules of the Yatsuki seriously at all. Facing this Shinto priest's sarcasm, Ruehui smiled and said, "Takaharumiya-sama, actually you aren't young anymore. Haven't you thought of retiring early? Don't think that you can do whatever you want just because you killed Iwasaki. The night crows here only chose to obey because of your threat. You should think about how to secure the position of golden heron first." From Takaharumiya's point of view, Ruehui's radical actions were completely suicidal. In order to take over the position of golden heron, she killed the previous golden heron, Iwasaki Yatsuke, and then threatened the other 11 night crows. It could be said that she had already lost the support of the Yatsuki. Now, as long as Takaharumiya and the other night crows retaliated against Ruehui, with her weak Kamiyoshi clan, it would be impossible for her to survive in the face of so many forces. This golden heron position would just be a funeral gift. Other than Takaharumiya, most of the other night crows present had the same thought. "Kanzaki Ruehui, you have already offended all the higher-ups of the Yatsuki. Now all you have to do is wait for Takaharumiya-sama to call out, and countless forces will come after your life. You won't be able to do much. Are you all thinking that I won't be able to do much for long?" Just as Takaharumiya and the other night crows were thinking this, Ruehui smiled and helped them speak their minds. Then this new golden heron looked at Takaharumiya on the screen and smiled. "Takaharumiya-sama, are you really not planning to retire? If you retire now, you might be able to enjoy your old age." "What a joke!" Takaharumiya glared and said angrily. "Kanzaki Ruehui, are you threatening this old man?" "I don't dare to say it's a threat, it's just the truth. Not only will this old man not retire, but I will also sit in this Ise Grand Shrine for 30 to 50 years. What can you do to this old man?" Before Takaharumiya could finish, a strong light flashed on the screen he was on. Boom! Accompanied by an earth-shattering sound and a flash of light, the scene on the other side of the screen immediately turned pitch black. At the same time, Ryudo, who was standing next to Ruehui, casually pressed a button, and the image on the screen not far away changed to the exterior of Ise Grand Shrine. This is. When they saw the exterior of Ise Grand Shrine, the night crows in the meeting room couldn't help but feel numb, because there was no shrine on the screen. It was just a large piece of debris left behind after being bombed by missiles. Chapter 392. This, Yatsuki's golden heron, Ise Grand Shrine's priest, Shinto's leader Takaharu Miyagi, disappeared just like that. Looking at the disastrous scene on the screen, the other 10 night crows in the meeting room were so shocked that their scalps went numb. They couldn't say a word. Originally, everyone thought that Ruehui's actions of ignoring Yatsuki's rules would be severely punished, especially since the other two golden herons would definitely not sit by and do nothing. However, on the day Ruehui was crowned as the golden heron, another golden heron, who was about to punish her, disappeared, along with the symbol of the Shinto, the Ayase Grand Shrine. 7 to 8 missiles flew from afar with smoke and landed around Ayase Grand Shrine, razing the entire area to the ground. Takehara Miyagi didn't expect Kaneshiro Ruehui to be so ruthless and have such ability. Launching 7 to 8 missiles at once wasn't something an ordinary faction could do. Even a faction like the Kamiyoshi clan wouldn't be able to launch so many missiles at once. It wasn't just a matter of money. Of course, Ruehui didn't just rely on the Kamiyoshi clan's power. She also had the head of the Tenmu Group's weapons department standing beside her. Those 7 to 8 missiles were launched under Ryudo's orders. After all, as the head of the weapons department, he had the authority to mobilize a huge arsenal. So as long as Ryudo was willing, he could even arrange a lime barbecue for Tokyo. Of course, there was no need to do so for now. Just as the night crows in the meeting room were shocked by what they saw, Ruehui slowly opened her mouth and said, "Everyone, Takehara Miyagi was attacked by unknown villains and died. It is the misfortune of Yatsuki." "Unknown villains?" "I clearly saw the young man beside you press the launch button." Although Ruehui's words sounded serious, they sounded quite sincere. But the people in the meeting room naturally didn't believe a single word. After all, Ryudo pressed the launch button in front of them. But whether they believed it or not, it didn't matter. More importantly, the golden heron Takehara Miya was already dead, and he died under the bombardment of a heavy missile. This was a completely different story altogether. Previously, the assassination of golden heron Iwasaki Yanasuke could be attributed to Ruehui's underhanded methods. But this time, in front of all the night crows, he directly fired a missile and blew up the Takehara Temple together with the Ayase Grand Shrine. This was no longer a matter of despicable means, but a matter of how terrifying Ruehui's forces were. To be able to fire missiles without restraint in this land, this in itself represented a huge amount of authority. This kind of authority was above the Japanese government. They could even stand on the heads of the bowing party and shit on them. After that, they could even ask them for toilet paper. Therefore, when Ruehui expressed that she would temporarily be in charge of the Takehara Temple, and at the same time be in charge of the two golden herons, the others could only remain silent, not daring to say a word. Unknowingly, the way they looked at Ruehui became a lot more submissive, and the angle of their heads was lowered as much as possible, as if they were meeting with their superior. But this kind of thing was natural. After all, the Yamato people were such a race. When you were stronger than them, they would not accept it and prepare to bite you. But if you were stronger than them, they would kneel at your feet and beg for your protection. The current Ruehui was in such a state. Her strength was much higher than the other night crows. She didn't even have to worry about the golden herons, and she could kill them as she pleased. Such a woman, no one dared to say anything to her, and they all expressed their sincere congratulations, congratulating Ruehui for being promoted to the position of golden heron. With Ruehui-sama, the development of the Yatsuki will naturally become better and better. The heavens are really blessing Japan. Indeed, Ruehui-sama is a heroine. I admire you. If Lady Ruehui has any orders, we will definitely follow her lead and obey. At the end of the meeting, the surrounding night crows scrambled to curry favor with Ruehui. From their enthusiasm, those who didn't know would think that this group of people had a good relationship with Ruehui. In fact, just 10 minutes ago, they were still thinking about how to kill the leader of the Kamiyoshi tribe. Only 10 minutes had passed, and everything had changed. This was the benefit of having a bigger fist. After all, the current Yatsuki was actually an imperfect organization. In the previous triangle of army, government, and religion, without the army, the merchants, who were added in, were simply a bunch of mud that could not be supported by the wall. They could not form a three-legged complementary posture at all. The habit of merchants was to seek profit and avoid risk, So when faced with the threat of extreme violence, they would only change sides faster than anyone else, just like now. These fellows actually changed their faces so quickly. I really can't help but admire their shamelessness. After the group of night crows left with happy smiles, Ryudo, who was standing next to Rue Hui, couldn't help but ridicule. So they can only be merchants forever, never able to do anything big. Speaking of this, Rue Hui couldn't help but stand up and stretch. Obviously, sitting there for a long time made her body a bit stiff. With this stretch, Rue Hui's proud figure was fully displayed. Compared to Iam's slender figure, Rue Hui was not as tall, and at the same time, she was more voluptuous with the mature charm of an elegant lady. Especially because she had given birth to the colored glaze. Some parts related to birth were more obvious than Iam's. This almost made Ryudo's eyes stop. No, how can I have such thoughts about Mrs. Rue Hui? I shouldn't have. During this period of time, Rue Hui was very good to Ryudo, and was very close to him. Whether it was Ryudo's amazing charm, the same age as the colored glaze, or if she wanted to inquire about Iam through Ryudo. In short, the relationship between Rue Hui and Ryudo was getting closer and closer, more and more like a sister and a brother. Although the actual age difference between the two was not that of a sister and a brother, in terms of appearance and mentality, they were similar. Well, okay, let's go back first. It's not comfortable to stay here. After dealing with the remaining work, Rue Hui was ready to take Ryudo back to the Kamishiro Imperial Garden. Under Rue Hui's manipulation, Iwasaki Yanasuk's property was now annexed by the Kamiyoshi, and this mansion was also their property. But even so, this was still Iwasaki Yanasuk's house, and Rue Hui felt a little strange staying here. Not long after, the two of them walked down the stairs from the conference room upstairs, and came to the morning hall on the first floor. Because Iwasaki Yanasuk had just passed away, his body was still placed in the morning hall, and a large photo hung behind him. It looked very festive. In the morning hall sat the relatives of the Iwasaki family, and Iwasaki's daughter, Riko, was kneeling in front of the coffin. Iwasaki Riko was how should she put it, a woman with a very bold figure. She was wearing a black mourning dress, as if it was a big black bun. Coupled with the strange expression on her face, it was really hard to imagine that this was the dignified Lady Iwasaki. After seeing Rue Hui and Ryudo coming down, Iwasaki Riko narrowed her eyes, which were so small that they were almost invisible, and stood up after taking a deep breath. She came in front of Rue Hui and said in an angry tone, "Kamishiro Rue Hui, my father is dead. Are you satisfied now? You have my condolences." Facing this orphan of the Iwasaki family, Rue Hui just nodded lightly, and planned to go around her. Rue Hui was very clear that the things she had done would inevitably cause people to resent her. However, if he had to constantly consider the feelings of those who were being schemed against, then he wouldn't need to do anything. However, Riko obviously didn't intend to let Rue Hui leave just like that. She hurriedly blocked the door and shouted, "Wait! Don't think about leaving just like that. I want you to pay for what you did." Facing this lady's threat, Rue Hui just raised his eyebrows and smiled. "Then how do you plan to make me pay?" Before she finished speaking, Ryudo's figure blocked in front of Rue Hui, and stared at Riko with a vigilant gaze. The current Ryudo's strength was already very terrifying. Under the premise of having LV5 physique, he also bought a lot of skill books, and his skill bar was already full. It was no exaggeration to say that even if there were 70 or 80 people who wanted to kill Rue Hui, as long as Ryudo was present, they wouldn't be able to hurt Rue Hui. "I'm going to drag you to hell with me." But in the next moment, Iwasaki Riko suddenly took out a red detonation switch, and wanted to press it without hesitation. However, this woman's speed was a bit slow. The moment he reacted, Ryudo immediately kicked Riko's wrist, and kicked the detonation switch away. If you want to detonate the bomb, you have to detonate it quietly from afar. Why are you shouting in front of others? After picking up the detonation switch, Ryudo didn't know whether to laugh or cry. But before he finished laughing, in a building not far away, a woman who looked graceful and elegant also showed a happy smile. "You're right, Ryudo Kiryu, Kaneshiro Ruehui. This is how you detonate the bomb, farewell. After seeing Ruehui and Ryuto appear through the binoculars, the woman standing on the balcony, Kota and Tana, pressed the detonation switch in their hands at the same time. Boom! In the next moment, there was a violent roar around the Iwasaki mansion. In an instant, the pillars of the mansion were directly blown apart. The entire ceiling immediately fell down. There was no doubt that this was a carefully planned explosion. The person who placed the bomb was very professional, ensuring that everyone in the mansion would be buried as quickly as possible after the bomb was detonated. What? Because everything happened too quickly. The people in the hall on the first floor almost didn't have time to react before they were drowned by the falling rubble. Except for the body of Iwasaki Yanasuke, his daughter Riko, and the relatives in the hall were all cooked in the explosion. They were almost all crushed into meat paste. Beautiful, as expected of the professional explosives team sent from the American base. Blowing up a building like this is like playing a game. Watching the Iwasaki mansion quickly collapse after the earth-shattering explosion, Kota and Tana nodded slightly on the balcony not far away. It was hard to imagine that the woman who arranged the explosion just now was actually the daughter-in-law of the Nippon imperial family, the wife of the current emperor Itoku, Kota and Tana. But as far as Kawada and her superiors were concerned, Rui Kanzaki had indeed gone overboard recently. That woman even seemed to want to take over the entire country. How could the empress possibly tolerate this? You can only blame yourself for being too arrogant. How dare you come to Iwasaki Yanasuke's mansion to hold a meeting? Now you can go accompany that man in hell. After taking one last glance at the rapidly collapsing mansion that had turned into ruins, Kota and Tana left the balcony with a sneer. She got into a car and walked toward her Kokyo. No one expected that such an explosion would suddenly occur in the Iwasaki mansion. Moreover, this kind of very professional bomb placement could quickly blow up all the pillars of the entire building, causing it to collapse at the fastest speed. So logically speaking, the moment the bomb detonated, the people who were still inside would definitely not be able to survive. The construction materials weighing hundreds of tons would directly crush all the people inside into meat paste, unless someone could quickly find a blind spot and hide in it. However, for Rui Kanzaki, who was almost directly knocked out by the explosion just now, when she woke up, she couldn't even determine whether she was alive or dead for a while. Darkness, thick darkness shrouded the surroundings. The surrounding space was pitch black. Rui Kanzaki only felt that her head and body were leaning on a soft cushion, and there was a burst of dust in her nose. Am I dead? After opening her eyes, Rui Kanzaki subconsciously reached out, as if she wanted to grab the darkness in front of her. But the moment she said that, a warm hand stretched out and held Rui Kanzaki's hand. Don't worry, Mrs. Rui Kanzaki. Although it's a bit difficult, we seem to be alive. In this dark underground world, Ryuto, who was sitting next to Rui Kanzaki, held her hand and said in a somewhat bitter tone. Chapter 393. For the current situation, Ryuto also felt a little helpless. He clearly kicked the detonator of Iwasaki Reiko, but the Iwasaki mansion still exploded. And that explosion, it was obviously the work of a professional. Almost at the moment when the bomb exploded, the entire mansion immediately collapsed. At that time, there was a large chandelier above Ruehui's head, and it was about to crush her into a meat paste. At this time, Ruehui scattered the two guardian ninjas, Ramuru and Ritsuki, to monitor the outside of the mansion, and to monitor the night crows, who had just left, so only Ryuto was around. Of course, now Ryuto's strength is not weaker than Ramuru, and he can protect Ruehui in most cases. So at that moment, he quickly rushed over and hugged Mrs. Ruehui in his arms, dodged the chandelier and rushed out. But it was too late. The time was too short. In the blink of an eye, the door was blocked by the debris of the building. TCH. At that time, Ryuto, who realized that it was too late to take Ruehui out of the door, immediately made the appropriate response. He immediately rushed toward the corner of the stairs, which was a triangular gap between the stairs and the wall. In such a gap, even if the ceiling and other buildings above them all fell down, it won't directly fall on their heads. At least it will be a little safer. After that, Ryudo felt the floor under his feet tremble, and he fell into this dark space with Rui Hui. This narrow space is at most less than 2 meters in length and width, which is almost a very narrow distance. In such a narrow space, the two living people, Long Do and Rui Hui, more or less seemed a little crowded. Outside this underground space, there were all kinds of broken building wreckage, blocking the world above. But fortunately, there is still air circulation, otherwise we would have to suffocate here. After explaining the current situation to Mrs. Rui Hui, Ryudo smiled and said to her. In this pitch-black darkness, the young man's laughter made Rui Hui feel very comfortable, and the heavy burden in her heart was slightly relieved. Well, how to say it, although Rui Hui is a heroine, she is still afraid after all, especially when they are pressed in a large piece of debris. They don't know if the above will suddenly collapse in the next moment and directly crush them to death. However, although she knew that the hope was not great, Rui Hui still asked, Ryudo-kun, is there no way we can dig out? This, I actually tried just now, but it is very dangerous, it's better not to do it. Suddenly, Ryudo raised his right hand with a wry smile. He was wearing a very strange glove on his hand. This rogue digging glove, which could easily dig holes in any place, was bought from his Krypton shopping mall. It was priced at 5 million yuan. Although the price wasn't cheap, it was really fast to dig a hole while wearing it. Coupled with the level 5 constitution of the dragon fighters, it was like digging a hole. But the problem is that now it's not that Ryudo can't dig, but that he doesn't dare to dig. According to his rough judgment, the location of the two now is about 20 meters underground of the Iwasaki mansion, which is the location of a refuge basement originally built by Iwasaki. After the mansion completely collapsed, Ryudo held Rui Hui from the corner of the hall and fell into the basement with the broken floor, and they were blocked in the basement. At present, the basement is in a mess, and he doesn't know how many building debris are there. Long Do had been casually digging with his rogue digging gloves, and he felt that the building above him was about to collapse. Long Do was so scared that he didn't dare to act recklessly anymore. His move is undoubtedly correct. After all, in this case, it is better to wait for rescue from above. Now that Ryudo and Rui Hui disappeared in this collapsed Iwasaki mansion, the people of the Kamiyoshi clan and the Tenmu group will rescue them immediately. As long as they waited for the rescue team to move away all the wreckage of the buildings above, the two of them would be able to see the light of day again, without having to risk their lives digging everywhere. Of course, in fact, Ryudo also has a way to solve this problem, which is to commit suicide and reopen it. But that's a move used when there is no other way. After all, no one wants to shoot themselves in the head. It's quite painful. In short, now we can only wait. After listening to Ryudo's explanation, Rui Hui couldn't help but sigh. But in this case, it's useless to be anxious. They can only wait for rescue from above. For a moment, Ryudo didn't speak. Rui Hui didn't know what to say, and the darkness suddenly became quiet. After a few minutes, Rui Hui seemed to be a little uncomfortable and forced to find a topic. By the way, Ryudo-kun, actually I have a question that I want to know. What's the question, say it? What do you think of I am? For this question, Rui Hui has been wanting to ask for a long time. After all, Tenmu I am that woman. Well, how should she describe it? It's difficult to describe her as a normal person. Even if I am, who has been with Ryudo recently, seems to have become a little more normal. It's just from super psycho to psycho. Her nature will never change. When hearing this question, Ryudo smiled slightly and said, "This question is actually very simple, just one word. Obey." Obey. Does it mean to follow her lead blindly? It's more like tolerating a person with an abnormal brain. She is already like this, why don't we obey her? Puff. Ha 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 ha. When Ryudo clearly described I am as a person with an abnormal brain, Rui Hui couldn't help but laugh out loud. Generally speaking, the group of ministers and subordinates in the Tenmu group, who followed Ayam basically worshipped Ayam. In their hearts, Ayam was like a noble goddess that couldn't be disobeyed. However, although Ryudo was Ayam's man, he naturally didn't have any thoughts of worshipping that psycho. He just purely regarded Ayam as a naughty child with an abnormal brain. Of course, using a naughty child with an abnormal brain to describe Ayam was too evasive. After all, what she did wasn't at the level of a naughty child, but at the level of a psychopathic murderer. But no matter what, that psychopathic murderer was his woman, so he could only try to describe her as cute and harmless as possible. However, after hearing Ryudo's description, Ruehui laughed for a long time until her stomach hurt a little before she calmed down. She held her stomach and said, "No, I didn't expect Ryudo-kun to see Ayam like this. I thought you loved her so much that you couldn't extricate yourself. It's not like that. I haven't known Ayam for very long. I was even dragged back by her." "Oh, so that's how it is. She suddenly took a fancy to you, and then you were packed back to the unrestrained Sky Tower. What a lucky and unfortunate man." Although she didn't see the scene with her own eyes, Ruehui could guess the situation at that time. How to put it? The fact that he was taken back by Ayam was somewhat embarrassing. So much so that Ryudo couldn't help but blush a little. But at the next moment Ruehui sighed and said, "Sometimes I really envy Ayam. She can freely express her love and bring people home whenever she wants." Envy such a thing. Ryudo originally thought that Ruehui would laugh at Ayam for being too thirsty, but he didn't expect her to say such a thing. In Ryudo's eyes, Madame Ruehui was a woman who had no interest in relationships, and she also had a daughter, the colored glaze. Logically speaking, she shouldn't be envious of such a thing. As if she saw through Ryudo's thoughts, Ruehui smiled faintly and said, "Why, do you think I'm not that kind of woman? Do you think that I'm a dignified, elegant, and magnanimous god who doesn't have any human emotions? No, that's not the case. Sister Ruehui, you're very humane. It's just that you don't usually show it." At this point, Ryudo raised his head slightly and recalled that when he had a fever not long ago, Ruehui had been taking care of him by his bedside. At first, Ryudo thought that Ruehui was an impersonal woman, but as the two of them spent more time together, he realized that Ruehui was essentially no different from the colored glaze. From a certain perspective, the colored glaze was a younger version of Ruehui, who hadn't experienced so many hardships. On the other hand, Ruehui was actually a mature version of the colored glaze, who had experienced many hardships. Especially in this extremely dim underground world, Ruehui's exceptionally young face was more similar to the colored glaze, making it easy for people to forget that she was actually a woman in her 50s. However, the 50-year-old Ruehui Kamashiro's love experience in her life was zero. That's right, zero. A perfect zero. Although she already had a daughter, the colored glaze, to put it bluntly, her daughter wasn't born from a man. That was why Ruehui didn't know what love felt like, nor did she know what love between a man and a woman was. When I was in school, because I was the eldest daughter of the Kamiyoshi family, not a single male student dared to approach me. After that, I was imprisoned in the Tenzai Shrine for 20 years. After I was released, it was a series of jobs. Before I knew it, I was already in my 50s. That's probably how I'll be for the rest of my life. In the pitch-black underground world, Ruehui spoke in a sentimental tone, as she couldn't help but hug her knees. A person's life was less than 100 years. Now she had unknowingly wasted more than half of her life. What she wasted was the most important, the most dazzling, and the most beautiful years of her life. Thinking about it carefully, such a life was truly a failure. Previously, Ruehui knew that she wouldn't live past 60, so she didn't have the time to think about such trivial things. Now that she had used Ayam's, Hooligan's 100 Immortal Pill, to get rid of the dead knot of 60 years old, Ruehui couldn't help but think about the meaning of life. Especially when she found out that her nemesis, Ayam, had started to fall in love, and could spend every night happily. Ruehui, who had been alone in an empty room every night, suddenly felt that the nights were especially unbearable. Perhaps it was the darkness underground that made Rue Hui feel as though she had returned to those unbearable nights. Her mood instantly became gloomy, but just as Rue Hui leaned against the cold and rough wall and was about to move her head to make herself more comfortable, a solid and reliable body moved over. Following a light rubbing sound, Ryudo moved Rue Hui's head to his shoulder, while he reached out his hand and hugged the shoulders of this kamikaze leader from behind. When Ryudo hugged her, Rue Hui couldn't help but let out a soft moan, but she still couldn't escape from the warm embrace. There's no such thing. The next moment, Ryudo took a deep breath and said solemnly, Sister Rue Hui, as long as you're alive, every day is a new beginning. You still have a long way to go in the future. You'll definitely meet the people you love, and the people who love you. It had to be said that Ryudo really didn't know how to preach. It was a very ordinary sentence of encouragement, but when it came out of his mouth, it sounded a little stiff. It made people want to laugh when they heard it. But for some reason, these stiff words sounded especially pleasant in this pitch-black underground world, and even seeped into Rue Hui's heart very naturally. Since she was born, this was the first time Rue Hui was hugged in someone's arms. After all, she was the one hugging most of the time, although she had only hugged Iam and colored glaze. So this was the feeling of being hugged by someone. It was quite reassuring. Unknowingly, Rue Hui also reached out and hugged Ryudo's neck, and laughed softly in his ear. You're just a kid in your teens, but you know how to make people happy with your glib tongue. It's not glib tongue in my eyes. Sister Rue Hui is indeed a very charming woman. Oh, is that so? How is it compared to your Iam? Actually, when she asked this question, Rue Hui was a little shocked. She had never thought in her life that she would actually ask a man whether she was superior or inferior to Yongji in terms of being a woman. Ryudo heard this and replied without hesitation. Spring flower and autumn moon. Each has their own characteristics. I can't compare the two of you, and there's no way to compare. There's no way to compare. This sentence is not correct from a certain perspective. There's still a way to compare. In the darkness, Rue Hui reached out and turned Ryudo's face in her direction. A pair of pupils with a strange expression stared at the young man's eyes, as if those eyes could also speak. This, Sister Rue Hui, could it be? In the next moment, before Ryudo could react, a soft and fragrant touch came from his mouth. After that, Ryudo could not think of anything else, and could only enter the primitive state of instinct. In the pitch-black underground world, in a small space that could barely fit two people, accompanied by the rustling sound of clothes falling, beautiful flowers bloomed on the pitch-black canvas, dyeing the darkness with an alluring blush. Chapter 394. Just as new emotions were blooming in the dark underground world, in the ruins of the Iwasaki mansion above, a well-equipped rescue team was desperately trying to save people. Because they didn't dare to use machines to dig, fearing that it would cause the ground to collapse and crush the people who might still be alive. All the rescue workers could only use the simplest tools to carefully clean up the scene. Lift that piece. Be careful, don't step on the ground. The steel cable is in place. Prepare to lift the largest piece of rock. Now, almost an hour had passed since the sudden explosion. The police officers of the Search Division 1 had already set up a cordon around the Iwasaki mansion, and there were police officers walking around everywhere. Logically speaking, this kind of incident shouldn't be under the jurisdiction of the search department, but because Tajima Orihana was a mole in the Heavenly Eye group, she immediately intervened. Of course, her intervention wasn't unrelated, because, reporting to the chief, traces of explosion were found around the load-bearing pillars of the building. The culprit should have used the latest thermal expansion point explosion technology to instantly destroy all the load-bearing pillars. At this time, Tajima Orihana was sitting in a temporary command center not far away, and the explosives expert in front of her was explaining the principle of the explosion. After listening, Orihana frowned and said, "This kind of explosion technology is very complicated, right? It's very complicated, and it's not something an ordinary soldier can grasp. It requires the support of a powerful technical system. And even our official explosives team doesn't have it. Then you're an expert in this field. Which forces in the country can grasp this technology? After hearing this question, the explosives expert frowned slightly. But he still said carefully, as far as I know, the weapons department of the Heavenly Eye Group, a major arms dealer, can fully grasp this technology. What else? And a certain unspeakable force can also do it. Speaking of this, the explosives expert looked in the direction of the Tokyo port, not far away. As everyone knew, there were several American military garrisons near the port, such as the Niama Army Center, Yokosuka Base, and so on. In other words, the unspeakable force that the explosives expert was referring to was naturally the American troops stationed in Japan. They were also one of the suspects. Although on the surface, the US and Japan were allies, father and son, officials like them naturally knew that the US Army had been secretly stirring up trouble in Japan. Sure enough, was it that woman Kohei Tanya who made her move? Her movements were fast and ruthless, aiming to kill Ruehui and Ryudo in a single blow. After the demolition expert left, Lin Hua could not help but sigh slightly. Lin Hua was naturally very clear about the heir American chess piece, Kohei, who was hiding in the royal family. Ever since she went to study in the heir American Empire, she had been secretly carrying out espionage activities. After she came back and became the empress, she became the biggest hidden chess piece. In fact, Lin Hua had already thought that recently, when Ruehui crazily nibbled away the power of Yatsuki and tried to become the most powerful woman in the country, she would inevitably be obstructed by the empress. But no one expected that person to act so quickly and decisively. Ruehui had just killed 2 golden herons and ascended to the peak of power, and almost immediately after she ascended to the throne, she was assassinated by explosives. This was too scary, and according to Lin Hua's investigation, Kohei Tanya should have bribed the Iwasaki family early on, which was why she could react so quickly, including the planting of the explosives. He had to teach that person a lesson, but Ruehui and Ryudo Kiryu should be done for. Looking at the ruins of the collapsed building, Lin Hua could not help but shake his head. Although when she learned about this Sama did not even think about it, and said that Ryudo was still alive, and she looked very confident. But Lin Hua did not know where her confidence came from. But in any case, there was nothing else to do now, so Lin Hua could only continue to supervise the rescue work, hoping to find the 2 of them as soon as possible, even if it was 2 corpses. At the same time, while Lin Hua was rescuing people and catching the culprit, dozens of meters underground, Ryudo and Ruehui were also reminiscing about the aftertaste of what had just happened. Perhaps, darkness could stimulate people's primitive desires, which was why they were unable to extricate themselves, and broke through to a new level of relationship. I never thought that this kind of thing could be so wonderful. When Ruehui lay on Ryudo's shoulder, she felt warm all over, and even her heart was incomparably warm. Even in this thick darkness, she felt as safe as if she was at home. This sense of safety was given to her by this young man called Ryudo Kiryu. To be able to get such a feeling from a young man who was 40 years younger than her, this was something that Ruehui had never dreamed of before. Me too, it's like a fairy tale. After hearing Ruehui's words, Ryudo turned his head and kissed her lightly on the forehead. Then, he hugged her body that was slightly stained with sweat and dust tightly. Up until now, Ryudo had already done it with 2 women, who were also the 2 most beautiful women in the world, and the feelings he obtained were completely different. When he was with Yongji, it was like the 2 of them were engaged in a life-and-death duel. It was filled with wild excitement, and it was almost a situation where one would lose their life if they were not careful. When he was with Ruehui, it was like the 2 of them were drinking tea in a tea room lit with sandalwood incense. However, it was not tea that he was tasting, but the strong feelings and sweetness of both of them, and it felt very comfortable. The most important thing was that Ryudo could empathize with Ruehui, as if their souls were constantly communicating. Could not give Ryudo the feeling of body and soul blending. After all, no one could empathize with a crazy person. At least Ryudo was not that crazy. After the two of them hugged each other for a while, Ruehui said slowly, "Get up, put on your clothes first. Otherwise, when the rescue team comes later, it will be quite awkward." In fact, when the two of them were blending in the darkness, they had already vaguely heard some movement from above. If there were no accidents, it should be the rescue team that was quickly cleaning up the wreckage above, and the movement was also approaching as time went by. In other words, Ryudo and Ruehui should be able to be rescued soon, and they should be able to return to their daily lives. However, returning to their daily lives, was it really a good thing? Yes, and no, at least for Ruehui it was. Hearing the sound of cleaning up the wreckage getting closer and closer, Ruehui only felt that her heart was getting more and more muddy. When some light gradually seeped out from above, she whispered, "Ryudo, Kun, after you go out, can you forget everything that just happened?" "What do you mean? Do you think I'm that kind of irresponsible man?" After hearing Ruehui's words, Ryudo frowned slightly. Speaking of which, Ryudo was still a very traditional, very male chauvinist type. In his eyes, as long as he had sex with her, she was his woman. Unless the other party was really unwilling to be with him, he would definitely not let go. It's not a problem of being irresponsible or not. After all, you are Iam's man, and I'm just an old woman. I don't want to see you in a dilemma. In fact, when lying on Ryudo's body, Ruehui was already thinking about the ending of this matter. Although Ruehui and Iam were allies now, secretly sleeping with someone else's man was a bit too much. What's more, the age gap between herself and Ryudo was too big. Even Ruehui's daughter was the same age as Ryudo. This was completely like an old cow eating young grass. It would make people gossip. "So you're talking about this? No problem, don't think too much." Seeing that Ruehui didn't seem to be able to think for a while, Ryudo hugged her slender waist from behind and smiled. "Do you think Iam is a woman who cares about this kind of thing? She won't care about sharing a man with you. Iam was originally a crazy beauty, not to mention that she had already said to Ryudo, 'If you can pull her to bed, I'll be more than happy.'" So from a certain point of view, the matter between Ryudo and Ruehui was originally fueled by Iam, so there was no need to worry about Iam. But the secular world. Secular world? Who is the secular world? Now we are the secular world. The people who don't like go die. When he said the last few words, Ryudo's tone had a hint of murderous intent, and at the same time, it also had the unique indifference of a superior. Don't know if it was because he had been with women like Iam and Ruehui for a long time, or because he had experienced too many big events. The current Ryudo had matured at an extremely fast speed. What's more, he originally knew that he was taking the evil path, and was destined to be a demon king. So if anyone in the secular world pointed at his relationship with Ruehui, Ryudo would not hesitate to send him to hell. "Ryudo-kun, you're right, I'm too weak." After feeling the domineering aura of the teenager behind her, Ruehui couldn't help but reach out and touch Ryudo's face, and kissed him again in the gradually emerging sunlight. Of course, Ryudo was right. After all, when their Kamiyoshi clan and Tenma group merged, they already represented the word secular world. Whoever dared to point at their relationship, just send him to hell. There was no need to consider this at all. And the only thing Ruehui had to consider was her daughter Colored Glaze's feelings. After all, Ryudo was Colored Glaze's classmate, and her mother was with her classmate for Colored Glaze. This was really awkward. But how to convince Colored Glaze? That was Ruehui's problem. Ruehui also believed that she could successfully convince her daughter to allow her to be with Ryudo and pursue her long-lost happiness. Boom! Rumble, rumble, rumble. Just as Ryudo and Ruehui were kissing passionately in the collapsed underground world, the ruins above were finally moved away, and a woman's head poked out from outside. It was Yohana Takushima. This Search Section 1 chief rushed over, as soon as she found out that the tunnel was going to be dug out, wanting to see if the two people below were still alive. But although Ruehui was shy and quickly separated from Ryudo, Yohana immediately sniffed when she poked her head in, and then showed a somewhat strange expression. After all, This was a sealed underground space, and Ryudo and Ruehui had just made love inside. So naturally, there would be some cough, some more special smell. Johanna was also an old hand in this, so naturally, it was impossible for her not to recognize this smell. So she glanced at Ruehui, whose clothes were a little messy, and whose face was a little flushed, and then looked at Ryudo, who was pursing his lips and smiled. Are you two having fun down there? How about I pretend that I didn't dig out, and let you stay a little longer? Ryudo heard this and replied with anger and amusement. Don't talk nonsense, hurry up and pull her up. Yes. The world's #1 boy toy. Whatever you say is right. Hey, who are you calling the world's #1 boy toy? In the midst of the noise, Ruehui and Ryudo were rescued from below by the rescue team, and they were quickly sent back to the unrestrained sky tower by helicopter. When the two landed on the tarmac of the unrestrained sky tower, Ryudo, who got off the helicopter, deliberately reached out and held Ruehui's hand, and even used a very intimate gesture of 10 fingers interlocking. Wait, don't. It's okay, there's nothing shameful about our relationship, just be generous. On the way to Iam's study, Ryudo smiled at Ruehui and said without hesitation. How to put it? It was inevitable for an ugly daughter-in-law to meet her mother-in-law. Although Ruehui's age was more like a mother-in-law than Iam's, she was obviously more nervous than ordinary daughters-in-law. However, after seeing the two walk in hand, Iam, who was sitting on the office chair, was first stunned. Then she laughed. Puffed. Ha. What's so funny? Don't tell me you haven't seen people holding hands before. Originally, Ruehui was still a little nervous, but after being laughed by Yongji, she immediately returned to her usual attitude of having a battle of wits and courage. She asked in a calm tone. No, I'm just happy. At this time, Yongji smiled as she came to Ruehui's side. She leaned over and whispered something into her round and smooth ear. Next time, if there's a chance, let's play together with Ryudo-kun, Sister Ruehui. Hihi, I'm looking forward to it. The moment she heard this sentence, Ruehui's calm face that had just barely recovered collapsed, and she immediately blushed. Just like this, there was another burst of laughter in the office, and Ryudo looked at the two women with a puzzled expression, as if he had not realized what kind of path of no return he was about to embark on. Chapter 395. The following week could be said to be the happiest time of Ryudo's life. During the day, he accompanied Ruehui to work at Kansai Imperial Garden. They flirted while working, and were immersed in the joy of being in love. It was the first time Ruehui was in a serious relationship with someone. Ryudo could be considered as such. After all, his relationship with Iam was more like an empress and a boy toy. It was not really a relationship. Hence, they often ate together, strolled by the lake, admired the flowers under the tree, and watched the stars at night. They often did something indescribable. As the saying went, a woman at 30 was like a wolf, at 40 was like a tiger, and at 50, she could sit on the ground and suck the soil. Ruehui was now in a more vigorous stage. However, no matter how vigorous she was compared to Iam, who was a psychopath, Ruehui was still much more reserved. Although she liked to be with Ryudo, she was also very flexible. She was very gentle, which made Ryudo feel very warm. During this week, Ruehui had also cooperated with Iam to cooperate from the inside and outside. She had almost all of the Yatsuki's forces in her pocket. Among the original Yatsuki's members, except for Tsukudori Kyoji, who chose to run away with his family when he saw that the situation was not good, most of the members were either bribed, roped in, assassinated, or replaced. After a short week, the entire upper echelon of Tokyo's forces had been purged. Ruehui now had absolute control over the situation. When things on her side were stabilized, Ruehui began to plan her revenge. That's right, revenge. Although the Iwasaki mansion explosion incident a week ago helped Ruehui in some way, she naturally would not forget to find out the culprit behind it. According to the joint investigation of the Kamiyoshi clan and the Tenmu group, The culprit was the current Japanese imperial empress, Empress Kawada. That woman had been secretly operating with the support of American, trying to control the power in her own hands. At this time, Kawada probably saw that Ruehui had been crazily nibbling away the Yatsuki's forces recently. She was afraid that she would become the most powerful woman in the country, so she took the lead. He had to admit that Kawada was really, she is quite farsighted. Even if she didn't do anything to me at that time, I would have taken her life sooner or later. On this sunny afternoon, Ruehui was lazily lying on the grass, leaning her head on Ryudo's leg. At the same time, she raised her head to look at her little lover. From this angle, the warm sunlight shone on Ruehui's delicate and flawless face, as if adding a layer of radiance to her face, making this God Generation's leader look even more beautiful. Ryudo also smiled and lowered his head, kissing Ruehui's cherry lips. Then he smiled and said, "But the Empress didn't kill us, she actually helped us become a matchmaker." Hehe, that seems to be the case. On account of this, I'll let her die an easy death. I'll just break her neck or something, Ryudo said pretentiously as he reached out and wrapped his hand around Ruehui's slender and fair neck. Then you are really gentlemanly. I have something more gentlemanly. Do you want to try it? Stop fooling around, it's broad daylight. After pushing Ryudo symbolically, Ruehui giggled and was hugged into his arms. The two of them fooled around for a while, before they were separated by a phone call. Hello, is this Teshima-san? When Takushima Rahana called Ruehui, Ruehui hurriedly tidied up her messy clothes, took a deep breath and picked up the phone. This made Ryudo feel a little regretful. After all, he was about to succeed. Oh, so that's how it is, it's like this. Then let's prepare and give that woman a surprise the day after tomorrow. I'll arrange for my men to make a big scene. I'll leave it to you. After talking with Rahana for about 5 minutes, Ruehui hung up the phone and showed a happy smile. She smiled and touched Ryudo's face, and said with a smile, "Sorry, it seems that I can't continue to accompany you today. We have to prepare for some serious business." Is it about the imperial family? Yes, there will be a press conference at the Kokyo the day after tomorrow. Apparently they are going to entertain America's diplomatic group. We can make our move then. When she mentioned the Kokyo, Ruehui's eyes flashed with killing intent. The current imperial family was rotten to the core. Emperor Wu Diak was a useless person, and Empress Yu was a super spy. They were a bunch of vermin. But it didn't matter, after all. The moment Kabato Tenya made a move on Ruehui, the fate of her family was already decided. Everyone related to Kabato Tenya had to die, whether it was her husband, daughter, parents, or other relatives and friends. With Ruehui's current ruthless way of doing things, she would rather kill hundreds of innocent people than let anyone go. They could only blame those people for being related to Kabato Tenya. Just like that, Ryudo and Ruehui made plans to attack the Kokyo together. That's right, it wasn't a sneak attack or a threat. It was a real attack. They wanted to completely eliminate Kabato Tenya and the imperial family. On the same day, they wanted to put an end to this mascot group that had been vermin in Japan for hundreds of years. Of course, the other forces could more or less feel the preparations of the Kamiyoshi side, especially the imperial family that was the target. 2 days later, at noon on this important day, the diplomatic group from American had also slowly driven to the Kokyo under the eyes of thousands of people, preparing for the ceremonial diplomatic meeting. In the ancient palace surrounded by water on all sides of the Kokyo, it had received generations of diplomatic groups, one after another, from one country after another. And American's diplomatic group was definitely the one that appeared the most in recent years. After all, they were related to each other by blood. For the current relationship between Japan and American, the vast majority of Japanese people were well aware, but no one dared to raise an objection. Even for the visit of the most powerful country in the world, most of the media were very proud of it, quite a bit of the pride of father's favorite child. Therefore, just before the clock pointed to 11 in the morning, a large number of reporters from various TV stations and online programs had gathered near the Kikyo, outside the Kokyo. Under the barrage of the reporters, the American emissary group that was heading to the Kokyo in 3 black sedans slowly arrived at the entrance of the Kikyo Gate. This group of Americans also followed the tradition and got off in front of the Kikyo and walked to the inside of the Kokyo. When the group of well-dressed gentlemen passed by, the lights on both sides of the road kept flashing, and they also cooperated and waved, showing a very friendly gesture. Of course, in the mind of this group of diplomatic group, it was, "Take a picture, you're blinding my eyes, bastard." But at least on the surface, this group of Americans still maintained a harmonious appearance and followed the rules to walk to the Kokyo. However, such a happy atmosphere was covered with a layer of shadow with the appearance of the 3 huge helicopters. Rumble, rumble. Before the group of American diplomatic group walked into the Kokyo, a gust of wind swept up in the sky above the Kokyo. This gust of wind is? Helicopters. When everyone looked up with an expression of disbelief, they saw 3 white helicopters flying out of the clouds not far away. And it was a huge armed helicopter. It was a genuine armed helicopter. Those who were slightly knowledgeable would know that it was the Augusta Westland AW101 model, and it was loaded with various weapons that could be seen with the naked eye. The most terrifying thing was that the 3 armed helicopters had a huge eye pattern on the side, and behind the eye pattern was a map of the Earth. This feeling seemed to indicate that this heavenly eye was monitoring every movement of the world. At the same time, it was also the symbol of the Heavenly Eye group. Speaking of which, among the group of reporters here, although not many people knew about the Heavenly Eye group, it was not to the extent that no one knew. But they never dreamed that the armed helicopters of the Heavenly Eye group would openly fly into the Kokyo from the main entrance, over the heads of the American diplomatic group and reporters. It should be known that the Kokyo had an important position in this country. Not to mention rushing in with an armed helicopter. Even driving in with a car was not allowed. Even foreign VIPs could only enter on foot. However, this tradition, which had been going on for so many years, had become a joke under the invasion of the armed helicopters. A huge joke. What was even more exaggerated was that the armed helicopter actually flew directly to the top of the Kokyo main hall, in front of everyone's eyes, and floated there proudly. For the entire royal family, this situation had no other meaning other than a demonstration. When the group of people led by Emperor Wu Da and the Empress came out of the main hall, they were all shocked by the scene in front of them. What is this thing? Who dares to be so presumptuous here? After seeing the 3 armed helicopters, the short middle-aged man couldn't help but stomp his feet in anger. And he quickly ordered the guards of the Kokyo on the side. "Quick! Go shoot them down." However, when the guards heard the emperor's words, they wiped their sweat and said helplessly, "Emperor, we don't have any weapons to shoot down the armed helicopters." In the end, Nippon was not allowed to have an army, and the firepower of the Kokyo guards was very limited. It was simply a dream to rely on a few people and a few guns to shoot down the highly armed helicopters. Damn it! Damn it! Ah! Seeing that the emperor seemed to be so angry that his blood vessels were about to burst, the empress standing behind him also frowned slightly. "Sister, what the hell is going on?" At this time, a blonde fake foreigner next to her, Xiao Hetianing, the younger brother of Xiao Hetianya, also came to her side. As the president of the Great Beauty Association, Father John naturally wouldn't miss this kind of reception. He must come to say hello and get to know people. Xiao Hetianya frowned and said, "It's the Heavenly Eye group. It's their armed helicopters. What does Heavenly Eye want to do? What does this have to do with them?" Although Xiao Hetianya knew that recently the Kamiyoshi clan was preparing to take revenge for her assassination of Rui Hui, she didn't expect the Heavenly Eye group to be involved in this matter. However, what Xiao Hetianya didn't expect was that as the 3 armed helicopters slowly landed in front of the main hall, 2 beautiful and familiar figures walked down from them. A super beauty in a red silk dress walked out of the first helicopter. She had the terrifying charm of a witch. As soon as she got off the helicopter, the Kokyo guards who surrounded her with guns raised were so shocked that they were speechless. From the second helicopter, a super beauty, wearing a dark black kimono, walked out. Her beauty was not inferior to the former at all. She had a faint smile on her face, and that graceful, elegant, and cultured bearing also made people secretly shocked. From the third helicopter, a young handsome man who looked at most 16 or 17 years old walked out. Xiao Hetianya was too lazy to look at him. But the real key now was that the Kamiyoshi clan main god Dai Rui Hui and the Heavenly Eye clan patriarch Heavenly Eye Iam. These two actually came together. This actually showed their attitude. These two. So they have this kind of secret relationship. Seeing this scene, Xiao Hetianya felt her breathing quicken. It should be known that the Kamiyoshi clan and the Heavenly Eye clan had been fighting openly and secretly for many years. Basically everyone in the circle was fully aware of this. Who would have thought that in this generation of Kanzaki and Heavenly Eye, these two clan leaders would suddenly abandon their former enmity and join hands in front of everyone? Moreover, they seemed to be coming directly at the imperial family, led by Xiao Hetianya. At the same time, the group of American ambassadors not far away also hurriedly arrived at the battlefield. It was as if they were the last piece of the puzzle that formed this pot of drama. Seeing that everyone had arrived, Iam and Dai Rui Hui looked at each other and smiled. Then they walked toward the Mikado couple in front of them. Wait! Stop! Seeing these two peerless beauties walking toward them without saying a word, the Kokyo guard captain hurriedly stood in front of them. However, a shadow flashed by, and Ryuto's body flew more than 10 meters like lightning. He kicked the guard captain and sent him flying. Chapter 396. At this moment, Long Do already had a superhuman physique. Coupled with sufficient financial support, this young man could buy hundreds of active and passive skills. He was so strong that he was like a cheat. When facing normal enemies, he was like a tiger in a flock of sheep. Whoever he touched would die. The crowd only saw a figure flash, and the guard captain was sent flying by a kick. He flew for more than 10 meters before crashing into a big tree. Crack! The moment he hit the tree, the people close to him clearly heard a crisp sound from his skull. Then he fell to the ground and didn't move anymore. Without a doubt, the Kokyo guard captain was dead, and he was killed in front of everyone. However, compared to the fact that this person was already dead, what shocked many people was the indifferent expressions on Rui Hui and Yongji's faces at this moment. Although they didn't know who Ryuto Kiryu was, they definitely knew that he was with Iam and Rui Hui. A person who came with the Kamiyoshi and Heavenly Eye group actually killed someone in front of so many royals, in the Kokyo, and even in front of the American diplomatic group. These guys aren't crazy, are they? Even little Hetianying, who was standing beside little Hetianya, couldn't help but widen his eyes when he saw this frightening scene. The group of American ambassadors not far away had expressions of disbelief on their faces, as if they couldn't believe their eyes. Indeed, from a diplomatic point of view, this situation was too ridiculous. I'm from the American diplomatic group. I'm on a diplomatic mission with the Neon royal family. But as soon as I arrived at the emperor's house, I found a few outsiders fighting here. Did I go to the wrong place? Immediately, the American diplomatic group looked at the emperor in surprise. They wanted to see how the emperor, who was nominally the leader of Neon, would react. After all, these people were doing whatever they wanted here, slapping the face of the royal family, and even killing a member of the royal family. Who could tolerate this? Of course he couldn't tolerate it. No one could tolerate it. Therefore, the moment he reacted to what had happened, the current heavenly emperor Wuda's face flushed red. He shouted loudly, "How dare you? How dare he commit murder in the imperial residence?" People came from both sides. Take him down. With this order, the Kokyo guards raised their weapons and charged toward Ryuto. However, Ryuto did not even bother to look at them. Instead, he casually raised his hand and gestured at the Kokyo guards in front of him to fire. When everyone saw this gesture, they were dumbfounded. Was there something wrong with this guy's brain? Don't tell me he thinks his fingers can whoosh. Bang! In the next second after Long Do made the gesture, a violent sound of wind breaking rapidly came from afar, and landed in the direction of his finger. A large caliber sniper bullet hit him on the spot. The head of the Kokyo guard running at the front exploded like a watermelon. For a moment, yellow and white pieces fell to the ground, as if there was a bloody storm. Plop! Accompanied by the sound of the headless body falling to the ground, the surroundings of the Kokyo main hall were terrifyingly quiet. That was a heavy sniper rifle? After hearing the whistle and seeing the scene of a headless body being shot, a few drops of cold sweat fell from Kawada's forehead. Shooting from such a long distance away, and still being able to blow up a person's head instead of penetrating, it was not something an ordinary sniper rifle could do. I advise you not to move. Right now, there are 50 Barrett 82 heavy sniper rifles aiming in this direction. They can send 50 people on their way in 1 second, and they won't even have a complete corpse. Ryudo, who gave the order to kill, did not even look at the headless body. Instead, he showed a devilish smile to the Heavenly Emperor couple and the American envoys not far away. Indeed, what Ryudo said was the truth. There was no falsehood. Now, in the periphery of the Kokyo, a large number of snipers had already been placed by his Heavenly Eye Group Weapons Department. They were equipped with Barrett anti-material sniper rifles that could shoot 12 7mm bullets. How terrifying was the power of this heavy sniper rifle? They had seen it just now. When it hit the head was completely shattered. When it hit the middle of the body was cut in half. Such powerful force was not a weapon used against people. It was used to remotely destroy some enemy equipment, such as parked planes, radar devices, trucks, and various other important assets. After all, the effect of this thing was too exaggerated. It was enough to make people pee on the spot. Just like now. Ugh. 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 After seeing the blood, flesh, and bone fragments splattering from the shattered head, Wu Diok's face turned pale. Then he could not help but cover his mouth and retch. The scene was really ugly, but before he finished retching, Ryudo's figure slowly walked toward the Heavenly Emperor couple. Stop! Don't come over! All the Kokyo guards around swore that they definitely wanted to warn the young invader. However, even though they had such thoughts in their minds, this group of guards did not even dare to let out a fart. They could only watch helplessly as Long Do approached them. Of course, this was also a matter of course. After all, there were dozens of anti-material sniper rifles pointing at this side. No one wanted to be the next unlucky person to have their head blown open. So when Ryudo came to the front of the formation formed by the Kokyo guards, he just glanced at the guards indifferently, then sneered. I will count to 3, get out of the way. Otherwise, let your family pick up your skulls on the grass. At this time, behind the Kokyo guards was where the Emperor and the Empress were. They were the last line of defense to protect the symbol of Japan. However, the moment Ryudo said this group of guards, who were supposed to be loyal, gulped and didn't seem to intend to give up resistance. After all, the one behind them was the Emperor, the symbol of Japan. Suddenly, the Kokyo guard standing at the front and closest to Ryudo couldn't help but say angrily, Bastard! You are also a Japanese. How dare you do this to the Emperor? Kacha! Before he finished speaking, Ryudo grabbed his head and twisted it with both hands. Under Ryudo's monstrous strength, the head of the Kokyo guard was directly torn off, literally twisted off. I don't like the word Japanese, so I plan to destroy this country, so that Japan is gone, and I am not a Japanese anymore, right? After lifting the head that was still bleeding with fear in his eyes, Ryudo smiled slightly and threw it to the back of the crowd in front of him. With this throw, the blood-stained head landed squarely on Heavenly Emperor Wuda's body. The short middle-aged man who had been scared out of his wits subconsciously held the head in his hand and looked at the pair of protruding dead fish eyes. Hey! Just when Emperor Wudeku was so scared by the head that he almost threw it away, Ryudo said indifferently, Don't throw it, hold it tightly, or I will let you swallow him alive. Ryudo's voice sounded very indifferent, but everyone present did not hesitate to think that he would do as he said. Demon, this young man is a demon. Unknowingly, the Kokyo guards who were blocking in front of Ryudo also retreated to the side, making way for the young demon to kill. And Ryudo walked forward without hesitation, approaching the emperor and his wife who were standing at the entrance of the main hall step by step. This guy. What does this guy want to do? Are the Kamiyoshi clan and the Tenmu group crazy? How could he act so recklessly in public? The current situation was completely beyond Kawada's expectations. Although she thought that Ruehui and the Kamiyoshi clan would retaliate against her, she didn't expect that they would actually kill their way into the Kokyo and in front of the American diplomatic group. Killing people in front of the diplomatic group was a very rare diplomatic incident in the entire history of human beings. The degree of horror was comparable to when the American president suddenly pooped in his pants when he received foreign guests. It was simply ridiculous. What about the Kokyo guards nearby? What about the self-defense forces? Why hasn't anyone come yet? Seeing Ryudo was about to come in front of her, Kawada's hand holding her sleeve tightened. Originally, there were groups of guards around the Kokyo. After all, this was the last bit of face the Nipponese had after being beaten to a pulp. They still had to protect it. But Ryudo's side was about to tear down the Kokyo, but there was still no support here. Could it be? No need to wait. Now the area around the main hall has been completely blocked by our people. You won't receive any reinforcements. Ruehui seemed to have noticed Kawada's nervousness and uneasiness, and she smiled at her in an elegant tone. What? Are you crazy? How dare you do this to the royal family? Slap. Before Kawada finished speaking, Ryudo directly slapped her in the face. Shut up. Looking at the queen sitting on the ground with an expression of disbelief, Ryudo sneered. You have no right to speak now. After slapping the empress in front of everyone, Longdo casually took out a document and placed it in front of the current emperor, Wuda. In 3 minutes, there will be a live broadcast for the entire country, and I want you to read the contents of this document in front of everyone. Read the contents of the document? Perhaps because he was holding a head in his hand, Emperor Wuda was almost scared out of his mind. He looked at the document in Ryudo's hand with trepidation. The beginning of the document was the declaration of the last royal family. The document said that from today onward, the Neon royal family no longer existed, and the Yamato dynasty that had been passed down for 126 generations came to an end. At the same time, the local religion led by Shinto was abolished, and all shrines in the country were closed and destroyed. If this document was read, the result would be the foundation of the entire country would be completely uprooted. This. After reading the document, Emperor Wuda was dumbfounded. He asked in a trembling voice, You, what are you? Is there something wrong with you? Do you think this declaration can be recognized by the country? Suddenly, Kawada also stood up and yelled at Ryudo, You can threaten us. But don't think that threatening the emperor to make such a declaration can change anything. This country can't be controlled by you. The parliament, the cabinet, the court, and several major parties, including the governors of the various prefectures and districts, are all our people. Just as Kawada was about to say that they can't be controlled by you, Ruehui walked over and said with a smile, What? With Kawada's identity, she naturally knew how important the positions that Ruehui mentioned were. They controlled almost all the important officials in Neon. At this time, Ruehui leaned over and said with a smile, These officials have all submitted to us, plus the forces in the Yatsuki. Now this country is a toy in my hands. I can play with it however I want, even you are one of my toys. Hiss. The moment she heard this, Kawada couldn't help but take a deep breath. But she still tried to insist. Are you stupid enough to think that Neon is an independent country? As long as America is still supporting me, you can't do anything to me. Yeah, this is why we chose to make a move when the diplomatic group came. With that said, Ruehui turned to look at I am not far away. Yongji, on the other hand, got the hint and clapped her hands. A dozen black-winged ninjas in black immediately appeared behind the American envoys and stabbed a few long needles into their brains. Then there's no problem. After this group of diplomatic group is brainwashed, they will become our puppets. They will do whatever we tell them to do. After seeing Kawada's stunned expression, Ruihui explained with a smile. Crazy. Crazy. These people's brains are not normal. Seeing that the situation was heading in the direction of a bottomless abyss, the queen finally couldn't help but warn. You are making an enemy of the most powerful country in the world. Do you know the consequences? You're wrong. Suddenly, Ryudo came in front of the queen, raised her chin, and said with a smile, "It's you who are making an enemy of the most powerful force in the world. The consequences are that you and your master will all die. No one will be left alive. My master and I. No way." This crack. Just when Kawada just realized what Ryudo was saying, her vision suddenly tilted, and her neck was twisted to a strange angle with a crisp sound. You're tuning in to the Earbook Haven YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.